Planning Board for July 20, 2021. It is 6:37. We have a public hearing which begins at 6:45, but in the meantime, we'll do introduction of members, assignment of alternates, and maybe we can do a little bit of board business before the first hearing. You folks are here for the first hearing for Campers Inn? Okay. Is Dennis not going to join us?
Dennis can't be here.
Oh, okay.
We have a previous commitment.
Oh, that's fine. I'm looking over and I'm seeing the empty chair, so. Okay, so our town engineer is not with us, although he did send us his notes on the application that's going to be before us at 6:45. So we have board members, Steve Hatfield, who is one of our alternates, and Steve, you'll be voting tonight because we are missing two of our regular members. Robin and Chris are not here tonight. And then we have board member Peter Coffin, Vice Chair Liz Merrill, Selectmen's Rep Richard Wilson. I'm Glenn Koppelman. To my right is Ellen Faulkner, our administrative assistant and also a board alternate. And since we have another board seat to fill, Ellen will be a voting member tonight as well. Board member Peter Bakey and town planner Glenn Greenwood. So we do have, with our alternates sitting, we do have a full 7-member board to vote. So. All right. Let's see. We do have minutes, which
We did that last time.
we did that last time. We don't have minutes.
They were automatically one, weren't they?
No, not the minutes of the
June
15th,
15th.
June 15th.
Oh, I'm sorry, I corrected them, but I didn't think.
I make a motion, we approve the minutes of June 15th.
I'll second that.
Motion by Lynn, second by Peter Coffin to approve the minutes of June 15. Discussion. Corrections or adjustments? Hearing none. Keep wanting to call roll call vote. We don't have to do that.
No.
So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? So that's unanimous. Thank you. All right, let's deal with a couple of quick items here. We have a couple of invoices from Dennis. Actually, there are 3 from him for work that he has done for us. Let's see, one of them is for 15 Wadley Point, the other is for alternative sales, and the other is for the 1686 house. I remember alternative sales and 1686 house. What is 15 Wadley Point?
That was the conditional use permit for extending the house to the kitchen
Yep.
Oh, okay.
out onto the patio.
Okay, got it. So if the board is okay, I'm going to sign off on these invoices. $165 for Wadley Point, $436 for alternative sales, and $196.75 for the 1686 house. Well, it wasn't here, so I'll try to leave them in the order. Leave that out because that is I've got 4 minutes left. We can't get into the discussion on that one because that's going to take more than 4 minutes. But I can read this letter dated June 25 from Partners Bank. And it's addressed to this board. Dear board members, this letter is to notify you that Partners Bank of New England is pursuing all necessary approvals to open a branch in the former bank branch location in Carriagetown Plaza at 53 Church Street. We are a mutual bank established in 1933 in Sanford, Maine as Sanford Institution for Savings. 2 years ago, we changed our name to better reflect who we are and to prepare us for the expected growth outside of the Sanford area. The Kingston branch will be our 11th branch and our 3rd branch in New Hampshire. We will offer banking products such as deposit accounts, residential and commercial loans, safe deposit boxes, and all the ancillary services you would expect from a bank. We will install an ATM on the outside island that currently houses a drive-up tube. The island will be retrofitted and will not change its footprint. Partners Bank has a long history of supporting the citizens and communities that we serve, and we look forward to becoming an important member of the Kingston community. If there is any further information you require in order to move forward, please contact me. I will be happy to answer any questions or address concerns. Thank you for your consideration, and it's signed Karen Sharf Morin, Senior Vice President and Branch Administrator. Gives her contact phone numbers. So nice to see that a bank is coming back into that location. Any questions from the board of us?
I make a motion that we no further review.
I don't even think they're asking for that.
No.
I'll second it.
Well, we should, because
Yeah,
it's a change of a business in the, in the plaza.
Okay.
It's going from one bank to another bank.
Yeah.
The only exterior changes are, as they indicated, that the drive-up thing will be an ATM outside,
One of the 3 drop-up windows will be ATM.
right? Which it appears they're already doing work to make that retrofit.
Looks like it's about done.
I'm assuming they've gone through the permitting process. So we have a motion that no further review by this board is needed. Peter, did you second it?
Yep.
A motion by Lynn, second by Peter Coffin. Any more discussion on this? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Ellen? Okay. All right.
Can we take those out of order, so anyone that's here
Yes.
for?
Well, right, there isn't anyone here, I don't think, for this, but we will, we can dispense with that, I think. Okay, so we'll get back to correspondence after. There's a whole bunch of stuff in board business that we can be discussing tonight. So the request was to take these out of order, and this one can be pretty quick. The second hearing for Berkshire Dominion Holdings has requested a continuance, and you folks are not here for that one, you're here for the Campers Inn. Okay. So if it's all right with the board, we'll deal with this request for continuance now. If anyone happens to come in, we can let them know what happened. So it's dated July 8th from Charlie Zilch, who's the engineer on the project. Addressed to this board, it's for Berkshire Dominion Holdings at tax map R 8 lots 40 and 40A at 92 and 125. Dear members of the board, please accept this letter as a formal request to continue review of the above referenced application to the next available planning board hearing date. In addition, we request continuance of the 65-day review period 30 days beyond that date as well. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Charlie Zilch.
I make a motion we continue the hearing for Berkshire Dominion Holdings to August 3rd.
We already have a very large application on August 3rd. You can double up if you want to. We have, on August 3rd, we have Granite Fields, T10 LLC commercial condos on the agenda then. Because we didn't put them on this evening because we were going to have the one we just continued, satellite. So we put them on August 3rd. So, I just feel free to double up if you want to.
My reasoning for the August 3rd date was because we've had such public interest in this. Maybe it's, and the public wants us to conclude this, at least reach an answer. I think we owe it to people to do that.
I'm not objecting to you doing it, I just wanted to let you know there was something on the agenda.
Do we have a sense for Glenn or Ellen maybe? They don't, Charlie doesn't give a reason for the request. I mean, I suspect it might have to do with gathering further data on the outdoor music.
Well, he did say that there was
I thought he had 2 reasons.
two reasons, and the first reason was, and I think the primary, is the safety review of the floating dock. They hadn't gotten a meeting yet on that. He gave the second reason is they hadn't had a chance yet, but I think Richard can tell us on when that was approved for the.
But I think that,
So up until this past weekend, every weekend they had music scheduled, it didn't happen because of rain.
Yeah. So the question is, I mean, you know, it's nice for us to be accommodating the way you're suggesting, but is that going to give them enough time to finish what they need to finish?
Did
Do
we
we
say
know?
when he wanted to continue it to?
so the next.
Is it a hearing or,
Available, it was the third.
It says next available planning board hearing date. Which would be the
That's the 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
third. Well,
Put it on the 3rd if you want to, if they're not ready, they'll ask for a
do it
continuance.
a continuance.
and I guess my concern with all of this is that, here we go again.
Right, you know, if we're gonna go through another
You
year.
know what?
Another winter.
Maybe you could just tell them that they have until August 3rd, we suggest they do what they need to
Well,
get all the
I was gonna
information.
wait, I was gonna second them on the discussion thing, I was gonna suggest that maybe we put this in the motion, but, the stipulation that would be, they would be in compliance.
We have not extended their music deadline
Beyond 30 days, right?
beyond 30 days, although we're kind of basically saying you can go to the next hearing date because we wanted to hear music. But we can hold that against them if they don't show up the 3rd, then we revoke that. And they don't have the outdoor music.
So we can,
Is there going to be additional testing of music?
Yeah.
We had at least one night, so that's some of the ones.
Okay, so Lynn, you made the motion.
I'll second it, if it hasn't been seconded already.
And in addition to that, I should say that they grant the request for continuance of the 65-day review period to 30 days beyond that date, which would be September 2nd, right?
We're talking about the 30-day, we don't do that, that's not us.
Okay.
So we didn't grant that, that's just
Yeah.
like, we can't. grant
No,
it.
that's
no,
a 30-day review.
The 65-day
65-day
time
review
clock.
period.
Right, there.
Not the select, our
65 here, very.
our review period.
So September what one?
Well, from August 3rd, the 30 days would be September 2nd.
So the motion is to continue the Berkshire Dominion Holdings hearing to August 3rd at 6:45, or no, we already have, well,
that's okay,
they're all the same.
6:45, It'll just be,
Yep, they're the second.
I haven't, have I? Oh yes, that's already been sent to the paper, so it'll have to be second on the agenda, because it's already.
Okay. So continuing the hearing to August 3rd with an extension of the statutory review clock for our approval, for our review, to September 2nd. Is that right? So that's the motion,
Second.
and Ellen seconded. Any further discussion? In favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that's unanimous. Do you want to make a note of this, or? All right.
Do you have a procedural question for Richard? That is, when you gave satellite permission to have outdoor music during the trial period, did you also grant outdoor seating? Because otherwise, it's kind of a moot point. Right, I know, but we never approved it, so.
But that's all pending on the approval. That's what they're asking for.
Right, I know they're asking for it, but they had previously used outdoor
It's
seating.
kind of senseless to play outdoor music if you're not gonna.
I realize that, but that's what I think why he was asking last time, if we could vote on that one item, because, the, governor's emergency orders, which is what you've been basing his outdoor seating on, expired.
That's not what he's basing it on. He's saying that he's had permission all along, and that's why it's here.
Okay.
Okay, we really shouldn't be discussing
No, okay, I just thought that's good.
the application in any detail, so. Okay. So the first hearing, going back to the first hearing, and it's now, we'll call it 6:55. It's our starting time for this hearing. Is for Campers Inn. The address is 154 Route 125, tax map. And what is the tax map, Helen?
21,
R2, lot,
21.
R21, lot 16?
Yeah. I have to apologize to the board, that was my error, much to my chagrin. I came in convinced it was not mine, it was. So my apologies to the board for, I left out a number on the, and I apologize for that. That was, unfortunately, it really was my error, much to my chagrin. So,
All right.
I need to recuse myself from the hearing.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. So Lynn is recusing herself, which means we no longer have 7 voting members, we have 6, but we certainly have more than a quorum, so we can continue with the hearing. So just so there's no misunderstanding, this was a typo in on the agenda and the notice, but were butters notified correctly, just for the record.
they were all notified, the address is correct.
Okay.
They were notified that it was R2,
I'm pretty sure.
which is incorrect. The correct address was in the mail
Yep.
as well. So they have the proper street address. In both of the legal notice and the butters notices, it says R2. It should say R21.
Right.
But it's, the physical location address was provided, so anybody that wanted to view it or go out and see it, would have had the proper address to find it.
And the correct butters were notified.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So, I'll read it's a short introduction here, but it's the legal notice reading that the planning board will be reviewing an application for the construction of a paved display area for the sale of campers and associated infrastructure. And it's Barry Geyer?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Barry Garrett with Jones Beach Engineers here for the applicant. Also with me tonight is Mr. Eddie Unger with Campers Inn. This project is the...
Okay. Could you repeat this gentleman's, or maybe you should introduce yourself for us.
I'm Eddie Unger, Regional Manager at Campers Inn.
Unger?
Yes, UNGER.
Thank you.
Eddie Unger?
Uh-huh.
Thank you. Okay.
And this is located at 154 Route 125. We're proposing to expand the existing parking lot for Campers Inn onto the subject property. The property is 1.21 acres outlined here in magenta purple. In the commercial C3 zone, also the Aquifer Protection Overlay District. It's on the west side of 125 between Stonebrook and the existing Campers Inn lot. It's currently undeveloped and contains an old shed, an old barn. I think everybody's probably seen it driving by. The intent is to expand the existing display area for the existing Campers Inn along Route 25 by installing paved parking / display area for the campers with connection to Route 125 and connection to the campers, existing campers and parking area. Stormwater will be collected in the swale on 125 and directed to an infiltration basin in the southeast corner. That's pretty much it for the project. The intent is to merge this lot with the existing Campers Inn lot. We did submit the voluntary merger forms, but once the property now, why?
Well, since we haven't accepted it for jurisdiction, I think we should hold off on the waivers at the moment.
Okay.
But before we get to that, and before we get to Glenn's comments, I guess I just want to make sure I understand that the reason that you're merging the lots is because of the requirement in town that that use, you can't have two of them within 1,000 feet of each other.
That is correct.
And so you're joining the lots, therefore it's one parcel, and this is just an expansion of that. So, but correct me if I'm wrong, but before we can act on it, the parcels need to be merged, do they not?
Well, they have submitted a voluntary merger form.
Okay, we do have that.
Well, we have one of them.
Yeah, we require three sets.
Because I'm saying,
We have one set, but we sign one set.
all right, it's a process, I understand, but, I mean, legitimately, because that 1,000-foot separation requirement is in zoning, if you didn't have that, it would require you to go for a variance, and I just wanted to make sure we weren't taking a step before we were ready to.
Understood.
Okay. So,
And correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't that also help you with the parking access point, because you have that 20-foot setback on either side? If you didn't merge them, you'd have to worry about the setback. You couldn't drive from one to the other. So it's like it's moved.
okay. So, in the order of things, obviously, before we would be voting on the site plan, we would need to be voting on the merger. Or,
Yeah, the board should at some point authorize you to sign that lot merger and send it along to the assessing official.
should we do that now and take that out of the way?
It would make it that much clearer.
Because I'm very uncomfortable going through the site plan process without having this done.
I just had a question about that. What if he doesn't get approval, then he may not wanna buy the lot, may not wanna merge them? So how are you gonna,
Well, at this point, we only have one.
We only have one.
So
We
we can
require
make a
three.
motion to do it, but he can always not bring us the other two forms, in which case it's not done.
okay, I don't,
So if he doesn't get site plan approval, they're not buying the lot, obviously, because that's the point. So there has to be something that
They can't
occurs.
merge the lot.
They can't, yeah, they're,
So this could certainly be held in abeyance, pending
correct.
Correct.
that. But as long as we take the
But
action,
wait a minute, actually.
no.
In order to do a voluntary lot merger, the names on the deeds have to be exactly the same.
Exactly.
So they can't have the names on the deed be exactly exactly the same until they own both parcels.
So it would have to be conditioned, the approval would have to be conditioned upon it all.
It would have to be conditioned upon
Correct.
the voluntary lot merger.
So yeah, if the board moved to approve the project, that would be one of the conditions that the lot merger occurred.
yeah, you
Because
can't
the
merge
deeds
something
do
you
have
don't
to
know.
be, the deeds have to be in the exact same name, or they can't merge.
So I can't sign it yet. Okay. All right, so we just need to make a note then that, I don't know when we're gonna get to that point, but whether it's tonight or some other time, but that would need to be a.
It's one of my comments, so I'm
Oh, okay,
aside.
okay. Sorry for that detour, but I just wanted to make sure that we were clear on the process.
Well, yeah, make sure, it's good to make sure we all know where we stand at this point.
So Barry, did you have anything else that you wanted to,
No, we need a conditional use permit, which we can discuss as well. We are asking for 2 waivers, and we did receive both the town planners and town engineers' comments. We don't have any issues with complying with those comments, so.
Including the one about moving access?
That was a question. It's a
Oh, question.
what that would be, and we have a DOT access, so why would we give it up?
Yeah. What's the current access to that one? How did we get to it? I never noticed on that.
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
Don't even know, because it's so overgrown at the moment.
Yeah.
There may have been a
I didn't know I was voting tonight, I haven't even looked at the plan. But when you're talking about access on that property, would you still get access from DOT if that was all one lot? Would you still qualify for multiple accesses to Route 125?
If they gave an access for this, oh, I see what you're saying. No, you do not lose your access if you merge lots.
Okay, that's,
They're deeded, yes, they're deeded with, and I understand what you're saying, because you merged them. No, that is not the case. They do not relinquish it. It's just campers in would have an additional.
okay.
Does
that's-
that make more sense?
Yep, I understand, thanks.
Okay, why don't we, Glenn, why don't you walk us through your comments? I don't know if, I know Dennis also had comments. I don't know if, I did not print them. I thought I read them.
There's a copy of them in the file.
Oh, okay, I read them in the email, but, well, why don't we start with you?
Alright, so I have campers in site plan reviews, the first public hearing for an application to expand the parking area for campers in, the board should consider local jurisdiction on this plan and get a time slot for rendering a decision. Do you wanna do that before I go through this, or do you not wanna do that until after?
Well, if the board is comfortable, I've got to tell you that based on your comments and based on Dennis's, I'm not sure how I feel about it.
Okay, George, let me go through this.
But if the board is ready, we can take the vote.
Alright, and so the following are my comments upon reviewing the plan to have commercial development, campus and parking lot expansion, so on and so forth. Number one, the legal notice and butters notices indicate that the site is on tax map R2 instead of R21. We've already talked about that. The plan should reference that the property is located in Aquifer Protection District. The note 2 on sheet 2 is this is the sheet indicating the actual site plan. And the plan does show the Aquifer Protection District line. They haven't neglected to show that the Aquifer Protection District impacts this lot. They just, in note 2, they call out what the zoning is for the site, and they should really include the Aquifer Protection District in that zoning classification. The property is within Protection District A of the Aquifer Protection District, so maximum lot coverage may not exceed 35% if stormwater management techniques allow for recharge on site. This should be verified by the town engineer. Note 2 on sheet C2 indicates that the proposed lot coverage will be 36%, so they would have to do a little bit of amending of their paved surface to get under that, to get to that 35% threshold. Sheet 2 also provides information regarding the types of parking light that will be utilized. This sheet does not show information to confirm that light pollution will not cross property boundaries. Candlefoot information should be provided to confirm this requirement. A conditional use permit is required for this proposed use because it is located in the Aquifer Protection District. Findings should be made for each of the conditions found in section 201, 4G of the ordinance. According to C3 zoning requirements, lots used for sites of recreation vehicles must be separated by 1,000 feet. In response, the applicant proposes to voluntarily merge lot R21 lot 16 and R21 lot 15-1. The applicant will need to provide the appropriate number of voluntary lot merger forms as well as recording fees for this action. And I didn't write it here, but maybe we should just indicate that, new deeds have to be prepared as well, or they wouldn't be able to voluntarily merge. On the plan set sheet C2 and C3, R21 lot 18 is shown as being owned by Coleus, but it is in fact owned by Mark LePage, and this should be changed. The Coleuses used to own property behind them, might even still own it, but Mr. LePage owns the one on the other side of Stony Brook, and that should be reflected on the plan. Their list of abutters does include Mark LePage, so he got a proper notice. He's just not reflected properly on the plan. The applicant is asking for 2 waivers for the site plan review regulations. One is for the mandatory preliminary review, and one is for mitigating parking lot impacts. The proposal is for only 13 spaces on the property. The parking requirements in that section that's titled parking mitigating for impacts, it is, from my perspective, really anticipated for much larger parking areas. talks about putting in shade trees and things, and so, I'm just, that's an editorial comment on my part. Not one the board has to consider when they think about doing the actual waiver, acting on the waiver request. 904.7 of the site plan review regulations have special requirements for selling vehicles. These include the installation of test wells, gas traps, and wash areas. These are not detailed on this proposed site plan. Why is this information not offered? And I guess my asking that goes to the fact that were you proposing to ask for a waiver from those requirements, or what? I didn't know. So they should either be on the plan or there should be a waiver request. An NHDOT driveway permit is required, and in this case has already been received for this proposal, as is a local driveway permit, because we recently changed that requirement in town that says driveway permits are issued at the local level, even on state roads. So I wanted to make the applicant aware of that. The site plan will need to have meets and bounds and be stamped by a licensed land surveyor in order to be recorded with the registry. And those complete the comments I had for this plan.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. I mean, a couple of these things on here are examples of why I have an issue with the whole jurisdiction thing. Things like the gas traps, the wells, and so forth, and then I mean, not having meets and bounds. I don't know why that isn't there.
That was just an error, they just didn't get it printed out. So, we have it, they just didn't show up on the plans. But those are some of those items we can easily fix. The gas trap, I missed that, so we'll add those on. We don't have an issue adding them on, but those are pretty, those are minor issues that can be adjusted.
Understood, but I mean, when we get a plan and we're supposed to invoke jurisdiction, it's supposed to be reasonably complete, and I consider the things like that as, even though it might have been an inadvertent omission, it's kind of a critical item. But anyway, so we have Dennis's comments. Barry, did you receive those?
Yeah, we received those. I went through them. He picked up a couple things that Glenn as well picked up. We don't have any issue meeting these requirements or his comments. Number 5, was it number 6? We are asking for a waiver from, but other than that, we will include the items that he's requesting.
It looks as though his first two are a couple of the ones, Glenn, that you picked up with regard to the surveyor stamp, the groundwater test wells. And these appear to all be mostly articles out of the site plan review regulations. Number 3 is relating to the gas trap issue that we talked about. Number 4 requires compliance with 907 bonding. It says submit bond cost for review. So that's a step in the process that needs to happen. Number 5, lighting must comply with lighting ordinance. Shown lighting lumen plan. Glenn, you had a comment regarding lighting?
Yeah. Some of the parking lot lighting seems like it's relatively close to the property boundary, so without having the foot candle measurements to see if it's 0 with the property boundary, I'm not sure.
So there isn't a lighting sheet, a lighting plan sheet?
I don't show the lighting. I have that. I can provide that.
They give the type of
Fixtures.
Yeah.
They're all dark sky compliant, and we can show the lumens.
But not the light.
Right, they don't show the dissipation pattern on the site.
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe the regulations specifically indicate you have to show the lumen grid. It does kind of lead you towards that.
Yeah.
Well,
I think it leads
You
strong.
it might not say it, but you sort of have to do it to get to the final result of showing no light spillage onto the neighboring properties.
So, yeah, I have that. We can provide
Let's see. Number 6, comply with landscaping requirements, screening, shade trees. Now you address that one too, Glenn, as well.
Yeah. For the parking lot, at least, there, I'm not sure if Dennis was implying that there should be more, buffering to the residentially zoned property that's behind it, but there's an existing tree line from my perspective.
And it's pretty thick.
And it's pretty thick, that is remaining between their edge of pavement and the property line for that residential structure, so I think it meets the requirements of our landscaping buffering requirements. I'm not sure if that was what Dennis meant, or if he was really talking about the landscaping that's required in the site plan for parking lots, because we have some landscaping requirements. Again, my feeling is it's for parking lots much larger than the one that's being proposed.
Probably more related to
Retail.
like a retail lot that would have aisles and islands.
That's my
Right.
feeling.
But there should at least be a note on the plan that the tree buffer is gonna stay.
Well, the plan shows that it's staying,
Okay,
so,
I will look at the plan.
so that should, I would feel that if it disappeared and it's shown on the plan, it should stay. They don't show it, I mean, they don't depict it, the tree line
We
not
show
being
the
there.
tree line staying, so on the proposed plan.
But we've ran into a lot of trouble with people cutting trees, so a simple note saying the tree buffer to remain.
I mean, the board can certainly, they can certainly do that.
It's not gonna hurt as a condition of approval.
It doesn't
Because they're
hurt.
agreeing to it anyway.
Correct.
And Glenn, just so I can clarify, because I missed the first part of your sentence, when you go by that property and see all of those trees there, all of that is on their property, none of that is on the residential.
I can't say that for sure.
Yeah.
But how much is showing on the plan is,
There's probably 30 feet at its widest.
okay,
It's almost 50 feet.
It is, I actually, at its widest, it's almost 50 feet.
Because the property, the setback from the residential is 50,
that's,
which is this line basically just south, just west of the parking lot pavement. And the existing tree line is shown, and I think it's actually grown in more since the existing conditions were finished, that, you know, it's almost to the 50-foot line. So you're looking most of the way for where all the,
so almost the entire 50-foot setback at this point is vegetated.
Correct. To that residential property, yes.
So, he says curb, this is Dennis's comment 6, it says, curb, screening, shade trees, etc. So, I'm not sure,
Well, I think that's the landscaping issue because I think it goes back to what Glenn was referring to.
right, the shade trees would be for islands and
Yeah.
things like that, and same thing with curb, you're not intending to have, unless you're talking about a curb along 125, it doesn't exist.
Well, again, I think that this is the part of the regulations that's intended for larger parking lots and retail
Retail,
settings
yeah.
where you've got aisleways and you've got islands and curbing.
I think that's what the current islands,
Yeah, so-
landscape.
Okay. Let's see.
Oh, could I just make one comment? It's really confusing, on parking lot layout, that you circle the numbers 8 and 13. Because it looks like you're saying on that one side there's 13 parking lots, because on the other side there are 8. But there aren't. It's 13 total, right?
When I read that, I looked at it, there are 13 total.
So either make it 8 and 5, or just have the one that says 13. But otherwise, it does look like, or it could, a designer could go out there and say, I think that we're entitled to 21 spaces out
No, I've already marked that on my plans.
there. Okay, thank you, because we're not allowing for 21 parking spaces.
Correct. It's 13.
Number 7 on Dennis's list is the operation and maintenance manual shall be recorded. It's just a reminder that needs to be done. Number 8 says that he has an objection to the stormwater drainage analysis and results. Calculations show basin outflow structure to be 7 foot. Okay, he goes into some detail there. If Barry, if you've read this already, response to that, that might be helpful.
No, those are just some, minor calculations we have to, look at. We don't have any issue, we can comply with all
Okay.
he's looking
So
for.
you're fine with what he's suggesting here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Number 9, he recommends a soil test pit be conducted in the area of the infiltration basin to verify the bottom of the basin is well above the estimated seasonal water table.
Oh, yeah, no, we have no issue with that.
Okay. That's number 9. Number 10, plan sheet C3 shows the weir location, but should show the structure. I also recommend the square foot area of the basin noted on the plan. Number 11, sheet E1, construction sequence. A pre-construction meeting is typically required, and that's just an FYI to you, part of the process. Number 12, permission is required for public service to conduct this work within their easement. I'm not sure which work. How much of it is within their easement?
There is an easement.
Oh.
That section.
Have you been working with them?
Yeah, we notified them, but this is not something that they're concerned about.
And number 13, would highway access from this parking area be safer if located on a town road, i.e. Stony Brook Lane? But since, well, I don't know.
Since he's got DOT approval, I don't think it's an issue.
And I think it'd be, in my opinion, if I lived on Stony Brook, I'd rather they access off of 125 than on Stony Brook.
Right. All right, so, Ellen, and just so that I assume you folks are either interested parties or abutters to this property?
We own the property.
We own the residential property.
Okay, so this is a public hearing, and once we get to a little further down in the process, we'll give you the opportunity to speak or ask questions if you wish, but just hang on. Okay. Do we have department comments?
May I just ask that one question? Because I'm thinking something different. So you own the residential property right behind the facility?
Yeah.
And you're not the police?
No, we bought it
You
in
bought it?
2017, and they're for almost 4 years.
So,
Is that another change?
now, you got legal notice? That's wonderful.
You don't know what happened.
That is just outstanding, but you need to change that one too.
He separated the land when we bought it. So we bought the residential, and then this has been for sale since we bought the residential.
Because to dive deeper into this, Coleus owned this piece at one time as well.
Right, they own the
It's
parcels.
not subdivided.
And then, okay.
The whole thing is one lot, so.
Okay. So, before we get back to the issue of jurisdiction and dealing with waivers and so forth, let me just do department comments. Building department has no comment. That's easy. And Conservation Commission has the following comments. It reads, the project falls within the Aquifer Protection District. Since RVs will be parked on the site, the Conservation Commission would like to see detailed plans for the capture of gas and oil spills and runoff. The Conservation Commission would also like to know the exact area of the impervious coverage as a percentage of the total lot size and whether that exceeds the limits set forth in the Aquifer Protection District ordinance. So I think we're in the process of addressing those items, right, Glenn? We're going to get verification on the percentage of impervious cover, and we're going to be dealing with the wells and the gas traps and all that stuff. So that should address their two issues. Okay, what is the board's pleasure at this point? If we're going to go into much further discussion, we really should vote jurisdiction. If
sounds like to me that a representative of the applicant has already looked at a lot of these issues that we've brought up. And it sounds to me there's a lot of administrative things that he appears that he can be corrected fairly easily. So my question would be to you or the board, what would be a major situation that we could not take jurisdiction tonight, to invoke jurisdiction on this plan? It sounds like things can be easily corrected by the applicant.
They can.
To get the clock going forward for them.
Even if there were issues, the question is whether it's sufficiently complete to accept jurisdiction. And my guess from what you said is the answer you have is, and Ellen might have is yes, and that's what I usually look for.
Yeah,
And the only reason the question came up was because of the whole lot merger thing, which came first, of course, part of the horse. But if you're saying it's ready,
I think that starting the 65-day clock gives them adequate time to make the kind of changes that are being
Right.
required at this point.
going from 36 to 35. So I will move that, unless you had another question on it?
No, I agree with you.
I will move that we accept jurisdiction on this project, and your concerns about the lot merger as being a requirement?
No, that's not my reason for being concerned about jurisdiction.
It's always
It's lack of completeness, but that's just my personal issue.
Okay, so
So you're making a motion to accept jurisdiction?
I am.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion by Peter Coughlin, second by Peter Baiki. Discussion.
Okay, so do you think there's anything that, it's gonna take longer than the 65 days?
I don't, that isn't the issue for me.
Oh,
It's more,
That's not his question, that's his question.
that's right.
yeah. So, what I'm looking at is what are your concerns about completeness, that the gas trap thing was missing?
All the things you
Mike.
mentioned before are missing.
My issue is that the length of stuff in memos from both Glenn and Dennis are very long.
Yeah.
And a couple of them are just critical issues. And maybe my issue is more with our own administrative process, that how did it get to us without this stuff?
Without all this information.
Not that it can't be done, not that,
Not that far.
yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not trying to put a roadblock here, I'm just.
No, I understand.
I'm concerned a little bit about our process and how it got to us without some of this stuff missing.
Well, that's what I'm looking for. I'm perfectly willing to vote against my own motion if there was a good reason.
And
for it.
I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything.
Okay.
Vote your own conscience.
We talked about that. I think a lot of them have already been addressed. He's seen the list. He's gone through a bunch of these things. So a lot of them seem administrative. The merger's not going to happen if the merger doesn't happen anyway.
Right.
It just starts the clock for them to go so we can proceed forward with this applicant.
Yeah, that's what my,
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, it didn't sound like it was catastrophic.
Well, the merger really isn't an issue because that's just, when we get to that point, it's just gonna be a condition of the record, so.
yeah, I see what you're saying. It's pretty lengthy. It's not as lengthy as some of the lists we've had, but,
Ellen?
Under normal circumstances, I would be annoyed that some of these things that are basic and in our ordinances aren't presented. But the applicant has already said they agree with everything Dennis has said and we're gonna fix it.
Right.
If there was an argument pending and Dennis wasn't here, I might be a little more reticent to take it under jurisdiction. But we're being told that yes, we recognize we miss these things, we'll have these things. I personally would rather see a continuance this evening to see the plans that are complete for us to vote for.
right.
But under the circumstances, I don't have a problem with accepting it for jurisdiction. I believe that these things could be addressed at the next meeting and it'll be all taken care of.
And that's kind of my same comment, is I have no problem taking jurisdiction, but I don't really want to see further action taken on this plan until all these missing parts are added, because it would be a long condition for approval. I thought this was gonna be a cakewalk tonight, but I didn't know the plan was gonna come in missing so much material.
Okay, any further discussion, questions? Steve, you've been quiet over there. What's going on? Anything? You're comfortable?
Yep.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna call for the vote then. All in favor of accepting the plan for jurisdiction, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? I'm opposed. So, 5 in favor, 1 opposed, and no abstentions. So the motion carries. The 65-day time clock starts tonight, and so we'll carry on here.
So if I may, it may be appropriate to look at the waivers,
Yes.
especially because of the landscape. If that failed, it would be a different animal.
Before we get to the waivers, though, since we do have the neighbors here, especially if there might be any concern that would weigh on the board in thinking about waivers, I'd like to offer them the chance to ask a question or make a comment. So, if you do, I'd ask you to come up to those chairs right there so that we can capture your voices, and because those are little microphones on the table there that. And before you start, if you could just repeat your name and the address for us, please.
My name is Thomas Newton,
And Laura Newton?
Thomas and Laura
Yep.
Newton,
Newton.
and the address is 4 Stony Brook Lane.
4 Stony Brook.
Yep. So some of the questions that we have, I think, are addressed in the plans. Obviously, our first is on the foliage or the tree line, because that is our privacy. It creates a lot of privacy from us and disconnect between 125 and our property. So if that is staying as is, then there's no concern there. But there would be, questions we would have on how much of that is being removed would be a concern. But if it's staying, then that's fine.
And the way it's being proposed is that it's not being touched. And the board has, I don't know if you caught the discussion, but the board has discussed that there will be, maybe as part of approval, maybe a condition, or maybe a note on the plan, or both, that would indicate that vegetated area is staying. The intention is for it to remain.
Great. Another concern would be, I think you guys were talking about the lighting as well, how close that is. Again, it's closer to the back of one of our garages, so it's not like our house is right there, because our lot's a bit of a corner. But just making sure too that there's not some giant floodlight just pointing right into our property.
So just so that you know, one of the things that the board would normally see, and hopefully we will see it next time, is a plan from someone who's, say, a lighting consultant or an engineer who has lighting capability, showing where the light fixtures are and how the light, it's measured in foot candles or lumens or foot candles, and how it, from the fixture spreading out, and the further away you get from the fixture, the lesser the light is. And the way our ordinance is in town is that they're supposed to be able to show that there won't be any light spilling over onto neighboring properties. It should be 0 at the property line. And all of our lighting ordinance requires that all fixtures be fully shielded and casting down, so you shouldn't have lights coming out from the side of the building, toward your property or anywhere. It should all be what they call dark sky compliant, so it's all shielded and downcast.
Okay. Another question that I would have, I think you guys were talking about too, where the new entrance from 125, that's fine, but I think you were talking about if we were to put the entrance on Stony Brook, it is a weird corner right there, and so I think that actually would be dangerous for a camper to be turning in. It's a blind.
It's also about a 10-foot drop from Stony Brook to the lot, so it would require quite a bit more excavation. And
That was a question by our town engineer, just querying whether or not that would be a possibility, but I think the board is comfortable with what's being proposed, and as far as the approved cut that they have on 125.
My other question would be, and I don't know if this is the right spot for it, but obviously just concerns around property value. I don't know if that's ever something that they talk about. I don't know, considering this is already a commercial lot, I don't think that it really does anything to our property value.
Well, one thing you have to be aware of is that in that stretch of Route 125, all of the lots that have frontage on 125 are zoned commercial C3 that have certain allowable uses. And that commercial zone was established when there were residential lots already further behind. So, you know, the town fully recognized that they were creating a commercial zone butting up against residential, and sometimes that can create conflicts, which is one of the reasons why there's a 50-foot buffer requirement to make sure that there's at least some sort of a buffer between the commercial use and the residential use.
Okay.
And this is a very low impact business compared to a gas station.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
We're happy campers and buckets. Like, there's no Dunkin' Donuts in front of my house.
But, you know, in fairness to you, if I lived where you lived and you know, I was looking at basically an empty parcel, you know, all of a sudden now there will be a commercial use on it, but it is an allowed use and it's zoned for that, so.
Okay. The other question, one of the last questions I have is, there is that shack, I don't even know what it is, it's a shed house. There is another one, it's not on there, I don't know if it's not on there because it's probably some temporary, it's a shack, but there is two, and I just want, my question would be, are both of them being removed?
Yes, absolutely.
That's not a bad thing, I want
So the intent, the applicant can confirm it or not, but the intent is that there won't be any buildings on that parcel. It'll just be parking space for the vehicles, with lighting and, yeah.
And I think
Where's
that's,
the second?
it's, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
that
right,
one.
it's kind of like back here, and it's like a shed. It's
Yeah, I'm not sure if
probably-
it's more of like a shed than an actual structure, and that may be why it doesn't appear on the plans.
Is it in the buffer?
It's not on our property.
Yeah, so it would be in the buffer zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is taking that down gonna impact the existing vegetation at all, Barry?
I do not believe so, but we will confirm.
Thank you.
So my only other thing, and I don't think this is probably the place, because it sounds like there's probably still more work to do, would just be when it's approved, or if it's approved and they start going, would we be notified on when construction would be happening? Or when the time frame of, I'm sure they have to do some excavating and filling and paving and all that. Would we know when that work was being done and what time of day? I asked because there's a baby coming, and so I just want to know if there's going to be what kind of construction zone happening in front of my house for how long.
I don't think there's a formal process for notifying you about that, but,
Do we post the pre-construction meeting?
I don't believe so.
there would, yeah, well, I mean, one of the steps in the process would be a pre-construction meeting where members of the town, inspectors and so forth would meet on site with the developer, just to make sure that, you know, everything is all understood and what the approval was and how they're gonna go forward with it. And during that pre-construction meeting, there might be some discussion about the construction sequencing and how they're gonna do it, but there's no formal notification process.
I mean, they will post a building permit out on site someplace, but that really doesn't indicate the location of the building.
But, I mean, it's construction work, it's gonna happen typically during business hours.
We can try to contact you.
I was gonna say, you have
Get a phone number.
the manager of the property right there.
It happens during normal hours, so it's not like it would happen on a Saturday or something. Is it just?
Well, it might.
It could happen on Saturdays, it's not like the construction happens.
But it's not gonna be happening at midnight or,
There's a time of day where it would stop.
Noise ordinance that.
That's what I'm more getting at,
Yes.
so like a noise ordinance.
I think that the manager of the property is here along with his engineer. He's just heard your concern. We would hope that he would be aware of that and reach out to you and keep in contact with you as best he can.
You're not gonna get any sleep for the next year anyway.
We just had a
Yeah, we have a toddler too, so that's why also too we were curious about the vegetation, because if that was open, I then have a toddler who has access to 125, so trees will keep them in.
Well, maybe.
Maybe.
Wouldn't work with me.
Well, you also know where to find Mr. Unger.
Yeah.
He's very close to you there, and I'm assuming you work at the facility.
I do.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
That's all we have.
Anything else?
That's it.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for coming in
Thank
and,
you.
well, you're welcome, yes, good luck, and you're welcome to hang out and hear the rest of this process.
Yeah, we gotta talk first, honestly. But no, we know we've got, so thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Oh, if you're leaving,
Oh, continue.
if we don't get to the point of actually doing an approval tonight, we would continue it to another date to finish it off. And because it's a continuance that's decided at this meeting, you wouldn't be getting another notice in the mail. It would appear in the paper, and you could check in with the planning board office and see when it's gonna be continued to.
Yeah, you can call the planning board office Thursday morning if you want to, and I'll tell you the date. No problem.
But you wouldn't receive another certified
Yeah, we
notice,
receive
so.
those. Okay.
I think we have all the information we need.
Okay, all
Just
right.
want our trees.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Okay, we'll close the public comment part of the meeting. So how how would the board like to perhaps deal with waivers? We have,
We have the written waivers there.
The first one's really simple. It's
the first
Oh, the
one,
mandatory preliminary.
Preliminary, yeah.
I would expect that the board would have no trouble granting that one.
Yeah, no, I'm just,
It's already accepted.
and you've received the waivers, because I remember seeing.
so we have a letter from Jones and Beach on behalf of their applicant requesting the two waivers, and actually the mandatory preliminary review is the second one, but we can do that one first. It's Article 904.4, mandatory preliminary review. Applicant requests a waiver to the requirement to hold a mandatory preliminary review. The proposed project is minor in nature and proposes additional paved display area for an existing use.
Make a motion to waive 904.4 as
For the-
requested by the applicant.
For the reasons
Stated by the
Stated by the
applicant in their
applicant.
letter.
Second.
Motion by Ellen, second by Richard. Further discussion? Peter or Steve, do you have questions on this?
Just, it was 904.4A, right? That was the.
It doesn't say, it just says 904.4
Okay.
in their letter.
Oh, okay, the whole thing, those are all the, there's quite a lot. All right, but that's all preliminary review, so yeah, 904.
It's all related to the preliminary
Yeah.
review. Any further discussion? Right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, that carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
The second waiver is from Article 904.15.B.5.10. Mitigation of impacts of parking lots. Applicant requests a waiver to the landscape requirements of the aforementioned article. The proposed project is an expansion of an existing paved vehicle display area, installation of the installation of the required landscaping would reduce the available display areas and block the display of product along the property frontage.
Motion to approve as stated.
Second. Motion by Richard, second by Peter Baiki to grant the waiver to that article. Stated. Discussion. Further discussion? in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstention? Ellen, did you vote?
I did.
So that's unanimous. So that waiver is granted as well.
And Barry, could we just, they didn't make it part of their motion, but could, those waivers should be placed on
Add to
the
the
plan.
cover sheet.
Thank you.
All right, we could deal with the CUP, right, Glenn?
You could.
All right. So Lynn, we're gonna have to struggle through because usually you're the one who reads all this stuff. Yeah.
Well, I can give you,
Well, I brought the book.
I don't mind reading, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry?
I said I don't mind reading if you would like.
Well, I just wanna make sure I get to the right place in our, Glenn, what is the,
201, I think,
201.4 G3.
located on page 201, Hampshire.
Okay. Oh, that's right.
Conditional uses.
okay. So this is, just as explanation for the benefit of anybody who might be interested or listening, out there in the world. This is in our, this is the Aquifer Protection District. And the following uses, if allowed in the underlying zone, are permitted only after a conditional use permit is granted by this board. And there are a number of uses, and let's see, which ones of those?
It's that very first one.
It's the first one, industrial and commercial uses not otherwise prohibited. Okay. So the planning board may grant a conditional use permit for those uses listed above only after written findings of fact are made that all of the following conditions are met. So we have to affirm that that all 5 of these conditions are in fact met, and we need to vote on them one at a time, and then at the end vote on the permit itself. So the first one is that the proposed use will not detrimentally affect the quality of the groundwater contained in the aquifer by directly contributing to pollution or by increasing the long-term susceptibility of the aquifer to potential pollutants.
And did we talk about treatment, surface treatment at all? What we did with the warehouse project?
We didn't even have the petroleum, we were gonna deal with that on the plan.
It's on the plan.
So we have, if I may, we have, storm, first of all, it's paved, so that it won't
Right.
go right to the ground.
I'm thinking of one side.
Second, you know, vegetated treatment swales and or boil water separators directing all the stormwater to the infiltration basin, so they will be treated prior to entering the infiltration basin.
I was thinking in terms of the salt or other type of treatment application, getting into the groundwater
We can
to reduce salt and aquifer protection.
to our operation maintenance manual, you know, the low salt or no salt, water items, into the OEM.
Yeah, I would be in favor of that, as being included in order to get the permit with the low salt system be used. What was the best management practices to be used on the, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna ask if we could put this off until the next meeting, because I would hate to vote no on it. And there are still some issues that Dennis hasn't approved yet. And Mr. Geyer has said that he will comply with what Dennis has asked for, but I'd like to actually get Dennis's comments back that saying they do comply before I would vote to grant the CUP. I agree that it will no doubt be done, and I appreciate that, but right now our town engineer doesn't seem to be indicating to us that the current plan we'd be voting on meets those requirements. And I really want to vote yes for this application. But I would like to hear, I would like a better report back from our town engineer before I vote on it. So
Well, that's
if the
one of the
board
things
wants to continue, go ahead, but I just don't know if maybe we should address this at the next meeting.
It may be worthwhile just going through this and making suggestions here, instead of voting on it, is, for example, if they come up with a plan that they can send Dennis, that would help that. That's why I'm suggesting the low salt for the EMP for groundwater management, to use. And then Dennis can look at that, and we don't have it, wait a month, have it come back in, and then Dennis goes back and.
Why don't they talk to Dennis and work all this out for the next meeting?
That's what I'm hoping, and that's why I want to get anything that we think we might want to have added in there now so that they can work that out.
I think that's a great idea, because again, I agree with, that maybe it's too early to vote on that particular portion of it, so, but I think going through the items just to make sure we're all in agreement as to what, if any, changes are gonna be required is a good step.
I'm just trying to skip
All right, so what,
a month.
maybe we'll just walk through each of these five, see if the board has any comments, and then perhaps hold off on the actual consideration of vote on this until the next time.
Yeah.
All right, so you've talked about the first one. The second one, the proposed use will not cause a significant reduction in the long-term volume of water contained in the aquifer or in the storage capacity of the aquifer.
So we are not proposing an additional well, that's one thing. We're also installing infiltration basin to offset our impervious on the site, so we don't think that would have any significant long-term reduction required.
So you're maintaining runoff on site?
Correct.
The third one, the proposed use will discharge no wastewater on site. Other than that, typically discharged by a domestic wastewater disposal system, and will not involve on-site storage or disposal of toxic or hazardous wastes as herein defined.
Again, as this has one building, we have no septic system, and there's no intent to store or dispose of toxic or hazardous waste on site.
I'm assuming that the cleaning and washing of the vehicles would happen at the main facility and
Correct.
not on this lot?
Correct.
Number 4, the proposed use complies with all other applicable sections of this article. Okay. And the 5th,
Yeah, it certainly doesn't fit into any of the 19 prohibited uses.
right.
So,
And the 5th one, a hydrogeologic study shall be submitted, and this is if,
septic.
for septic, and since there's no septic here, it doesn't really apply.
Absolutely.
So Barry, are you comfortable with
Yes, we are.
the issues related to
We
this?
address those, and we come back next
Okay.
time, and we'll have all our I's dotted and T's crossed to address that for a final time.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna deal with the conditional use permit next time. Anything else from the board, before we consider a continuance, or anything from Glenn, if you think we've missed anything?
I have nothing.
Mr. Unger or Mr. Geyer, any further questions from you about what needs to be done between now and the
I
next
think we have a
meeting?
good list of items that we can address fairly easily.
And if you need to reach out to either Glenn or Dennis, you have ways of contacting them, yes?
Absolutely.
Barry and I never talk. We talked a few times today, so.
I get the sarcasm, I understand.
We talk
I hear you.
all the time.
Okay.
Not just here either.
And not just,
All right, I think that we would be ready for a motion to continue then.
Motion to continue until
17.
The 17th, is that what you're doing?
plans need to be in by,
Well, that's Linda said, she's Lynn.
What's the date for celebration?
5th?
I'm sorry.
The fifth is two
Meeting's the
Thursdays apart.
17th, when do the plans need to be in?
We usually do it 2 weeks before.
The Thursday, two weeks before, hold
Would
on.
be
The 5th?
That's the fifth.
So it'd be the third.
Bring my book.
Yeah, I got the fifth.
It should
Okay,
be.
so Friday the 17th, plans are due on the 5th of August.
But we didn't hear that, because we were kids.
I know.
I'll second.
All right, so a motion by Richard, a second by Peter Coffin to continue this hearing to August 17, 6:45. I don't know if there's anything else. There probably is.
There's another earth excavation restoration plan.
So this would be the second item on the agenda. And with any new materials due no later than August 5 at noontime here in the planning board office.
If I can?
Yes.
I haven't posted this yet,
Yes.
and our procedures say
Oh.
continuances come first, so technically we can put them up first if the board would rather.
That would be good, I would think.
If that's our procedure.
So, you would expect them to be at 6:45 and not after that. So, further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That's unanimous. Okay, so we're continued to August 17th.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very
Not always, because sometimes something can post it already. So, like that's what happened with, Satellite, because it's already in the paper. Usually we try and put it, unless we know it's gonna be very long and something else is really short, but that's kind of what we're trying to do. Because technically, you guys didn't told me to put that on the agenda until at the end of the hearing. So,
I'm gonna take a quick break. Does anyone else? Or do you just want to keep going? Take a 5-minute break? All right, we'll be back. It's roughly 7:55. Pausing for a quick break. big enough.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's a good donation.
Oh, nice.
What?
Okay.
Oh,
So we have some correspondence, we have some board items, and we'll just sort of work our way through them here as best we can. The first one is, that I have here is the letter from Dana Truslow, giving us a couple of options and estimated costs on, let's see, doing an update to our aquifer maps.
yeah, we talked about that last meeting.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about wanting to get an estimate from her.
Yeah.
Right, and we've got that now. And she's made two proposals, option one and option two. The cost for option one is $2,500, the one for option two is $1,200.
Should leave half of them off the same.
But that's fine.
So this was distributed to everybody, right?
I thought I did. Didn't I get this, didn't you guys get this?
Yes, yeah, we got it. I remember thinking, one proposal was to do, the second one was to go to the people who do the town maps and work with them to update, but they don't use GIS, so it was not a good option.
Yeah, option two is, it's a lower amount, and to coordinate with O'Donnell and the planning board to get the two zones and the current tax maps. It says, I don't know what it would cost for O'Donnell to update the tax maps, but if you decide on this option, I can explore that cost with you.
So the cost she gave you is lower than the first option, but it's incomplete because it's only her
That's
portion
right.
of the work.
So we don't know what the other part of the cost might be.
And the entire tax maps would have to be updated.
Well, when you did it.
And it might be updated before it gets done because we would not be using a more modern system that people use, which is the GIS.
And option one is that she would complete the large and 6 to 8 smaller maps for approximately $2,500. This would include working to get the most recent subdivisions on the map. Since I don't know how many of these updates would be required, the cost is approximate.
Doesn't it make sense to do it once and work in coordination with, well, first of all, does the town want to do a GIS system? Or is the town just going to stay with the system that they have now?
Well, I know that the town is trying to get a lot of things sort of more technologically advanced and be able to let people get to them and see things, and I think probably having it electronically, if nothing else, would be better for inspectors. I know it's what you're looking for, Richard, as a health officer. So I think this is gonna wind up being better and possibly then easier to update.
I mean, what would be the
With the GIS.
Yeah, going with the GIS, absolutely.
Yeah.
Our goal is to have iPads or computers in every inspector's hand, probably by this time next year.
But that doesn't do any good if you don't have good information.
That is correct, and I brought this up because right now, depending on what you look at, depends on whether or not you're in the aquifer,
Right,
because you're not accurate.
correct.
And what takes precedence, the tax property card or the map? Because I have some that say on the property card it's in the aquifer, but it look like it on the map, and some the other way around. And obviously, every septic system, that's a big difference, cost-wise and plan-wise and everything.
And the idea with this is to have parcel boundaries shown on our aquifer maps. That's the whole idea.
So the line would be, follow the property, the parcel lines, and you can blow it up enough, and that's why I think the hard copies he's talking about are, it'd be 6 to 8 copies of maps, because it would have to be at a scale that
You can easily see
you can
as
see
opposed
it.
to
Each
the line
property.
sometimes will be
Yeah.
within the parcel.
Whereas the electronic version would be great because people who go look online, whatever regs, could then bring up that thing and you can do what I just did, which is when we were doing the last property, you go and you can keep expanding it until you get down to the parcel lines and see which zone they're in.
But if we're doing just the aquifer, are there other things that also need to be input into the GIS system other than?
Okay, well, there is a set of maps
Right.
that are kept for us, that are done for us by the planning commission. And those are all based on a GIS system.
Yes.
And they're different layers of a map set.
Yep.
Natural resources and all that
And
stuff.
I have them for Kingston all available through the MLS system,
Oh, look at
to be honest.
And the RPC's boundary line, property boundary map is old.
Yeah.
It's not dramatically old, but it's old. But it's electronic, which is something we can't say about our own friggin' tax map, which is crazy. Crazy. I'm saying this directly to the board of selectmen. It is crazy.
I'm arguing with you.
It is crazy that they are resisting, that they've resisted for 25 years.
We've been talking about scanning tax cards for about 15 years. If we'd done it when we talked about it the first time, it'd be about 25,000, now it's over 100.
To scan the tax card into the system.
Scan all our property files downstairs, it's about 100,000.
Oh, to the property files.
Even though they're available online.
No, property file is not available,
Just the tax card.
but that certainly makes sense. Well, so the difference is, and let me make sure I understand this, $2,500 to go with the GIS system, and $1,200 just to update the current maps.
Not knowing how much it might cost through O'Donnell
Right.
to add their portion of what would need to be done.
They
We're
would
talking
have to update
1,200.
I think it's a no-brainer decision,
I agree with you.
Yeah.
and it's short money.
It's short money, but I think the planning board has to go formally on the record and just say, we should consider a new tax company. Because places like Carter Graphic Associates, they don't even conceive of a world where everything isn't digitized. And they've been doing it for 20 years.
So you're talking about for tax company, you're talking about the assessment company. Avatar.
Because we have Avatar, who does our assessment cards.
Right.
But we have, is their name Seward?
Isn't it O'Donnell?
O'Donnell, I'm sorry, O'Donnell.
It's
That does our tax.
Thomas Tippy, the town tax map maker.
And why we haven't engaged a different firm
Then O'Donnell.
than O'Donnell all of these many years later. I mean,
Well, you know why, and I know why.
they do tax map updates for us, and they pump out our books every couple of years.
Yep.
But they're
By
not,
hand.
but they're not electronic, right?
But they're not electronic.
Okay.
And if I could just say, just for the selectmen's knowledge to look into things, I think we're getting ready to send our changes to O'Donnell to do a new set of maps. So this might be, you should talk to Susan, this may be the appropriate time to just
Change
find out how
companies.
much it would be to change companies.
Or really find out why they're being hesitant.
I mean, hasn't it always been done with money?
Could be, we've always asked for it that way, and no one's ever said.
No,
we
I
asked
asked them a decade ago for electronic tax maps, because I wanted them to give them to the RPC, and they said,
We've asked
Well,
for-
we're definitely gonna need them if we put computers and iPads in everybody's hands.
yeah, I mean, we will have all this great assessment information, well, we do have all of this great electronic assessment information through Avatar. But we can't put it on a map. And that's silly.
Exactly.
It's silly. Honestly, Barry Geyer and I argued over the aquifer zone because the way their surveyor looked at it, he looked at our tax maps and they show the aquifer protection zone, but the phrase aquifer protection zone was on the wrong side of the line on this parcel. So it made it look like the aquifer protection zone was on 8% of the parcel, not 92% of the parcel.
Hey Glenn, I need you to get that information to Susan, because if they do go with O'Donnell, that has to be changed on the next set of map updates.
Up to our law.
And they won't have that information downstairs to tell him.
So it was really frustrating, and where did I end up going? I ended up sending Barry a copy of the RPC stratified drift aquifer, which very clearly showed that all of the lot that we were looking at this evening was in the aquifer project.
Well, it's even easier when you look at them electronically and you see, okay, the wetlands are in green, you know, you do an overlay, and the wetlands come up and they're in green, and you do another overlay, aquifers in blue, and, you know, so you can really even clearly delineate it by color, which makes it all that much easier.
It does, and that's the beauty of the GIS system.
Well, that's it, that's
That
exactly
is
right.
the beauty, and the RPC, for really short money, about 15 years ago, digitized all the parcel information from the composite map that O'Donnell does. So we have that layer, but it's old now. The layer that's available through Granite is better than the RPC's layer. It has more subdivisions, but there are still subdivisions that are missing. And so that needs to stop happening. And that's only going to stop happening once we have a town tax map company that does it digitally.
Okay. You and I may get with Susan for a little while Thursday.
That would be great.
And I'll tell her tomorrow to make sure nothing happens until.
And maybe, I talked with O'Donnell, but it's been a decade since I've talked to O'Donnell. But at that point, they had no interest at all in going electronic.
Okay. So in the meantime, this proposal is before us
This proposal
now.
will help us.
Exactly, but I think we should say, she did say it's estimate, so we can say we approve an amount up to, say,
You could say, you could give a not to exceed number.
not to exceed like 3,000 or something like that, and give, go ahead.
Well,
Once she's got this data, if
Well-
this ever goes GIS on the town level, it easily, exports.
But let's just also ask, we do have this in our budget.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get to,
Ah.
is where in our budget is this coming from?
Or it can come from consultant.
Yes.
We have money in that line, and with the Board of Selectmen's approval, we also have money in grants that we will be utilizing this year that could also offset this map update. So I'll confirm with the budget tomorrow, but I remember looking at it recently, and we had funds in the budget. It's just usually we wouldn't transfer money from one line to cover another without talking to the selectmen first.
So,
But since
could be
one of them really
infrastructure.
wants the map, we figured that
Do-
we could talk to the other one.
do we have enough in one or both of those lines to cover a not to exceed number of up to, say, 3,000?
Yeah,
We do.
we definitely do. I think we have enough in just one line, but I
Well-
won't confirm it, but I know between two, we definitely do.
And add it in on the, since this is tax maps or infrastructure, we can add it in under infrastructure request if we want, with
Yeah.
help. So,
The infrastructure requirement?
yeah, there's
Could be an infrastructure.
they refer to it as Santa Claus, but there is
Oh,
some money coming from federal government.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm like.
Sorry,
This
that's-
qualifies
that's
as
what I
an
meant.
infrastructure thing, because for one thing, it would also help with the flood zones, which is absolutely positively infrastructure.
Well, there's
Sorry, I
also,
was focusing on budget.
my
Yeah.
view.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
should have said the federal grant.
Yep.
there's also the issue that we are supposed to be able to run this town hall remotely,
Right,
Yeah.
and until we get stuff done, we can't.
and Cindy
If
has,
there was a fire here that took this building out, we would just be saying,
Lose all
what's
those-
your property look
I
like?
know, really. And I know that, the financial officer is attending a webinar within the week on that kind of stuff too, to clarify, so that would be a possibility, that would be a selectman's decision.
Good. So do we need to take a vote?
Yes.
I make a motion that we authorize up to not to exceed $3,000 to work through the GIS system to redo the map.
To authorize
Per-
it down.
Authorize Dan.
Per option one,
That's a,
of Dana Truslow's proposal to us dated July 7, 2021,
Thank you.
for an update of the aquifer protection zone and
So
tax
easy
map.
to do when you have it in front of you.
Sorry.
Isn't this nice to
I'll-
go back together?
And I'm
again?
seconding that. What he said and she said, I'm seconding.
Second by Peter Kaufman. Discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? That's unanimous.
You didn't think that was gonna take that long, did you?
But this one probably will.
Oh.
Is this the?
This was brought to us by our select board, and most of you have probably either seen it in person or have seen it on the front of the Carriage Town News, but this is the
Oh.
property at 19 Marshall Road.
Oh, Christ.
I went and knocked on his door, so.
Okay. So, this package came to us, has lots of pictures, and nice, easy to read text. It's nice large print, so it's good. Albert Bryan is the owner of the property. He lives there. And I already said it's 19 Marshall Road. And this is the carriage museum that he has created there. Richard, I don't know if you want to do a preface, because since this was submitted to us, I need to read the record.
Do we know the tax map number for that or not?
I don't have it.
The preference would be that we got dozens of people saying, where's the permit? What have they done? Signed permits, planning board approval, everything. That they did absolutely nothing. And I went and talked to him and told him that he needs to check into planning board procedure, take out signed permits, and that type of thing. He is a former developer, so he knows the process. And he thought he was such a small scale, he didn't need it.
Right. But it's a large sign. I guess it doesn't function all that often. Well, anyway, I'll read the letter for you, and then the board has to decide how it wants to proceed. My name is Albert Bryan. I reside at 19 Marshall Road in Kingston. I have had a love for horse-drawn carriages and sleighs my entire life. Many years ago, I had a large collection of them. Recently, to get a hobby in my old age, I am now 82 years old, I slowly began to collect vehicles again. The thought occurred to me that I should share them with the public. I am opening a small museum at my home. I will be open only 4 hours a week on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Admission will be free. A small stipend of $5 will be asked of people for a carriage ride to help defray the cost of the carriage driver and his horse.
I'll just let you know about.
Okay. The fee will be subject to one's ability to pay. It will be a fluid collection as I buy and sell to upgrade. A maximum of 12 carriages can be comfortably displayed inside. A number of transit carriages will be displayed in tents outside. There will be a donation box that I hope is used. There are no employees. Usually my daughter or an acquaintance will aid in collecting the carriage ride money and have participants sign a waiver insurance requirement. I usually offer punch and cookies from Market Basket or Walmart. The front of the building will be kept free. I'll start that sentence again. The front of the building will be kept free for the carriage to come and turn around. Parking will be in the farm's front field. Featured on the walls inside will be the history of the carriage makers of the carriage town of Kingston, as well as Abbott and Downing of Concord. They produce the famous Wells cargo coaches. That's in parentheses. A wall has been set aside to receive pictures of the town's collection of carriages with captions addressing the makers. The plan is to take pictures August 8th when the town carriages are on display for Kingston Days. I apologize for not coming before you sooner. I did not consider this a new business, but a service provided to the public and the residents of Kingston. I am allowing people to see my private carriage collection on my property free of charge. The board is invited, welcome, and urged to come and see what I am doing. And signs it Albert Bryan, and he gives his phone number. And there's, as I said, there's a second page. By the way, I anticipate an average of 25 people a week. The first week about 25, second week 6, third week 15, fourth week 2. First week, people who saw it in the Carriagetown newspaper. Third week, mostly friends and family. The other two neighbors. I prefer a small amount of people so I can talk a bit about the carriages. The biggest problem, I may not be able to maintain carriage rides. The expense is too great. And Albert signed this letter as well. And then there are a number of photographs, as I said, they're color photos showing the beautiful carriages. And so there we are. I guess if it were something that were not visible from the outside, if he created this museum inside of his barn and he was just having friends and family stop over, that would be perhaps one thing. It's kind of invisible, but he certainly has made it very visible.
And we should, Glenn's done some research on this, so we should probably try and get him back in the room so he can address some of it.
Yeah, I was wondering if anybody could ask someone to contact Sumner or
Well, what? What question?
whether it constitutes commercial use, I guess.
What?
Whether it constitutes commercial use.
Well, it is.
It's definitely commercial use.
Well, I suggested that they wait till you come into the room to finish talking about Mr. O'Brien, since you've already looked up some RSAs and stuff about the use.
I mean, it's not agricultural. It's not agritourism.
No.
So it's in the C2.
Yep.
And we allow, I mean, it's kind of a stretch for it to be a permitted use in the C2. Because we don't talk about museums. We do talk about recreational facilities. So we could swing it as a recreational facility. I mean, it's incredibly low impact, except in the ways that it isn't. With having outdoor tents where he's displaying some of these things. And one of the tents right now is way up at the front of the property.
And parking.
And then parking.
And what about safety and toilets and?
Yep.
I mean,
Parking in the fields
he's.
with the rain?
Yes, and which, you know what, parking in the field is a common thing for folks to do in all sorts of towns, right up until the fields are wet. It's if one person went every Saturday, there is no issue out there. But if it becomes popular, it could be a problem.
Would this, if the gentleman did this once a month, would it comply with the special event permit?
Well, then, it's a change of use from residential to commercial.
Special event permit is through the Board of Selectmen, it's a
Right.
special event on the property.
It takes it out of our, takes it
So
out
I'm
of the
just saying,
landlord's
if he
hands.
didn't do it every week, and he only did it once a month, would he be able to get a special event permit?
First thought on that is if he only does it once a month, is he gonna have 100 people instead of 25 a week? Or is it
Well,
gonna
but
be a
then-
major ordeal?
With a permanent sign and everything.
Well, no, I think the sign would probably only have to go on wheels and only be brought out that one day. I don't know, that's why I'm asking, I'm just trying to
Give them the benefit of the doubt.
see what the options would be for this gentleman to pursue his hobby, because I believe, based on what Glenn has researched, what the board is looking at, this needs a site plan. There's no, the planning board has no option, it's not like we have something that tells us that, oh yeah, it's minor, you can just ignore it. We can't. But I'm just wondering what another option might be for this gentleman to pursue his hobby, but only doing it once a month, which he might find palatable, through a special event permit instead of a site review. I don't know that.
Well, if it's decided that site review is needed, the board certainly has the option to waive bits and pieces of it.
Right.
It could
Not
be,
requiring.
it could be less than a rigorous development proposal.
And it's really a change in use of the property, because it used to be used for people to board horses.
Yeah, it was a horse farm.
It was a horse farm.
So it was agricultural,
Right.
which meant the planning board didn't have to be involved. But this is not.
The planning board has been involved with that property in the past when they were running other businesses there. There was a tent company that used to run out of there.
And they used to do,
Stained glass.
They did
Yeah,
stained
stained
glass.
glass.
I remember that came through on some sort of
But over the years,
weird letter campaign or something. We didn't have to deal with that one either,
but over the years, there have been other commercial type uses.
Being someone who knows what else left is in this file, does anyone think that a site plan of some kind is not required? Because otherwise, we have the answer to tell this gentleman. And then Glenn and I can talk to him about the options he can pursue if he wishes to, on asking for waivers or things of that nature, or speaking with the Board of Selectmen. But if nobody around the table thinks,
No, I
if
definitely
we all think
think
it
he
needs
needs
a site plan, we
something.
can figure it out.
Has the board ever granted a special permit on a semi-regular basis like this?
Not that I know of.
Not that I mean, it was a special permit that they offered for the Renaissance Fair, right? And that ran,
Yearly, once a
that
year,
ran
yeah.
one weekend a year, right? I mean, they had tons of people, but it was one weekend a year.
I mean, I sympathize with him and everything else, I feel badly for him, but I think if we could do some sort of modified site plan.
And maybe if he works with Glenn and Ellen, they can come up with some proposal to bring before us.
Yeah. It's not gonna require extensive engineering and that sort of thing.
I wouldn't think so.
If the Board of Selectmen isn't comfortable with allowing once a month, and I understand why they may not be comfortable doing that. Anything short, and he would have to be comfortable only opening once a month. Short of that, it has to be some sort of site plan review.
Well, let me, let's take that board next Monday first.
Well, I think that you should wait and see if he's gonna ask you for it. I don't think you can take action on a request that nobody requested.
No, but I can ask them
Hypothetical.
hypothetically, because I think we need to give this guy options. We
Yeah.
have the choice of doing this, we have the choice of doing this. But why give them the choice if selectmen, I guess, they know?
Yeah, if they're not comfortable expanding sort of the idea of the special use permit to be something semi-regular, then there's no reason to even, offer that.
And I'm a firm believer in being equal to everybody in town, and just say, go do what you want to is not the way to do it.
Yeah.
Because
That's the other thing, that I think we need to treat everybody the same.
we put other people through the process for minor things too.
Yeah, I bet he's going to, on first blush, not be satisfied with one weekend a month, one Saturday a month.
So the turnout that he's getting, he's probably getting a little exhausted every week and putting so much into it, nobody going on. So maybe he's put his energy into one weekend and have more people show up, maybe a little more, satisfied.
Yeah.
But he also, it may become seasonal as well, though. Because obviously, I don't think, is the barn heated?
I don't know.
Did
So
you
how many
notice
people would drop by?
it was a sleigh?
Or slavery. Come on.
I went on Saturday to talk to him because I hadn't called him there through the week.
Well, the pictures look like
He
it.
was busy, so I just left a card with the carriage driver and said, have him call me the first of the week, so I never went in the bar. And
Did he call you at the first of the week?
He called me immediately, but I didn't want to go and start questioning him in front of a bunch of
Right,
people.
no, that was good.
So, leave it to
Denise, yeah.
Helen and Glenn to talk to him? Somebody?
And for Richard to talk about the
For
board.
Richard to talk to the select board about the permit issue.
Because I would love to do a special permit, personally. But he has to be comfortable with that. As does the board.
Okay. Ellen, are you all set with?
Mhm.
Okay. Board set with this for now? It's not gonna be the last we hear about it, I'm sure. Okay, moving on, we have several requests for release of funds. Now, I can just sign these, I'll state what they are, but I'm assuming that someone's done the research that these are okay to sign off on?
Must be.
Okay, I mean, I'm happy to sign, but, so this is for R 33-21-1 Hanoverian Holdings. That's the property beside the library, is that right?
Mhm.
Balance is, looks like $709.92. Next one is U9-49, Route 125, Cottage Place, LLC.
That's, that corner house that came to the HDC, Mr. Carboni.
Oh, Jerry
And this was
Carbone.
when they were first putting in for, what was it they were putting in for, lot line adjustment?
They want to do a lot line adjustment
Yes.
to allow
Yeah, yeah.
access to the back section, but
Right.
doesn't go through.
Right, yeah, right. So this one is for $2,006.47. R 30-10, Robert Healy?
Mm-hmm. That was for, the one on Church Street, where you came in. Wasn't Carriagetown, it was
No,
one
no,
by
it's
the- Yeah.
Fifty station,
And it's for $134.71.
It came to us, we had to deny it.
Yeah, that was all we were doing, but.
R 21-22, James Industries, for a grand total of $6,293.18. I don't know what that.
That was the one that, Northeast something bought. This was when they had the, they had a junkyard, you wanted to
Oh,
turn it into
down
a
at the end
power
of Main
line.
Street.
Yeah.
Yeah. That, what a random, did that move?
Well, they withdrew it because somebody else bought it. Remember the new
Oh.
Northeast, whatever,
Yes,
so
yes.
that's why we have all that money sitting there. Okay.
R 5-16, Jace Realty LLC?
Which one's that look like? Chase
JASE?
Realty?
Jace Realty is the automotive place that Dennis was the engineer for.
Across from Landscapers Depot?
Oh, okay.
Correct. They just put up the
Landscapers
security
Depot?
fence out front.
25. For a total of $1,175.73.
And I want to be clear that some of these people, just so the board knows, haven't asked for their funds back, but they've been sitting there for a long time. We no longer have anything going on, and Cindy has to keep adding interest to the monthly. Just clears off some of these.
Next one is R 25-03, looks like Southern District YMCA for $1,634.33. Next one is R 13-7, Jennifer Lynn Ward, $3,592.55.
Which one's that?
That's a little brown house across from Dunkin' Donuts and the gas station
Oh,
on Meeks Road and
the one they
125.
tore down.
Yeah, the one that's not there anymore, it's just a field.
Yeah,
And
that was just what we just did last month.
this one is for Karen Erickson, it's R 31-31-22.
That was a,
G?
yes.
That was the ADU we did just last month.
And, oh, there's no amount.
At the time, we were just putting in, we were putting less payments and stuff, that's why I put balance. Because
Which one is she?
She's the one on North Road,
those invoices have been
Towards the end
submitted.
of-
for the ADU in the garage, over the garage. It's attached,
Oh.
it's an attached garage.
Have all fees gone against it and everything
Yeah.
since it was so recently?
Yes.
All right, there seems to be a page in here, maybe it goes with something else.
This
It
goes with that.
goes with this.
No, this,
Oh. This is from Dennis Quintal, it's dated June 29, and it's pictures from Fieldstone Industrial Park. It says, see construction work on the site today and trucks hauling material in and out.
That's probably a mute issue at this point.
that's been addressed with the
That's
select.
been addressed by the select board.
Yeah, there'll be a pre-construction meeting first week in August, once we post
Once
the
the
bond.
box was,
And here is something related to the Fieldstone site, and this is from the Dubay Group, dated July 15. It's a waiver request. This is from Doug McGuire at the Dubay Group. It says, on behalf of the applicant, we respectfully request a waiver of Article 904.17.b.2, parentheses, small b, of the site plan review regulations to allow for an extension of the conditional approval for an additional 180 days. So this will be after the fact because it's already expired.
yeah,
Is that
it's
right?
correct.
It says the applicant has met all conditions of the approval except for the posting of the required letter of credit to cover on-site drainage improvements. And by the way, he doesn't have to do a letter of credit, he can do a cash bond, even though he was arguing to the select board that we told him it had to be a letter of credit. That is not true.
And he has met all conditions at this point other than that, but at the time of his meeting, he
Well-
had not.
He also hasn't posted his bond, and he hadn't, at the time we got that letter, we hadn't scheduled a pre-construction meeting either, but we're working on getting that done.
So all required state permits are in place, including DOT driveway permit, DES well siting, DES septic approvals, DES alteration of terrain, and DES subdivision. All final plans and Mylars have been submitted to the town, awaiting planning board signature upon receipt of a letter of credit.
And this is for which property?
Fieldstone
Fieldstone.
on 125.
Yeah, the errors say that.
The applicant has been working diligently with his financing company to obtain this final requirement, referring to the letter of credit,
Diligent.
and anticipates receipt within 30 days. Thank you for your consideration of this request. So do we have the Mylar?
I'm
Yes,
sorry?
we have the Mylar.
We have the
We
Mylar.
have the Mylar, yep.
Okay, all right. Okay, so.
We just need a motion to.
I will need a,
We need.
Oh, we need,
Yeah,
it's a waiver
It's a
request.
condition to grant
I
the
forgot we were
extension.
Make a motion, we grant the extension for conditional approval for an additional 180 days.
Second. Motion by Lynn, second by Peter Baiki. Discussion. All in favor, say aye. Whoa, whoa, whoa,
They're asking also not only to extend the 180 days, but to waive the requirement, but I think it had to be asked for prior to expire.
But it's a site plan review, and we just got.
Well, I mean, it's easy to do.
So we've got to grant the waiver and grant the extension.
Yeah, you have to like do two things.
okay, yeah. Yeah, it's a waiver of 904.17.
I make a motion, we grant the waiver and extension.
And then, I'll second that if Peter doesn't.
Peter, I assume you're okay with that? I am.
Who seconded it? Was it
Peter Baiki.
No, Peter Baiki.
Okay, Baker.
He was the original seconder, so
Okay,
I was just checking if he was okay with it.
gotcha.
Discussion. And do the vote now.
You can.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? One abstention. So,
Abstained.
Richard did.
I almost did. What is it? How many voting now? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, there's 6.
1,
6?
2,
No, 7.
Yeah.
7, we have 7. Do you want to change the vote?
No.
Okay. So then it's 6 in favor, none opposed, 1 abstention. Okay. This next letter is from an attorney. We don't need to go into non-public for this, do we?
No.
I'm sorry?
We don't need to go into non-public for this, do we?
It's
This is from Gottesman and Hollis. The attorney is Morgan Hollis, and it's regarding 266 Route 125, which is the warehouse distribution facility that we recently approved. And it's addressed to you, Glenn. How nice. As my client, 266 Route 125 LLC, has not received a formal notice of decision of approval with conditions from the Kingston Planning Board for both of its site plan application and subdivision application for property located at 266 Route 125, as decided by the Planning Board at its meeting of February 16, 2021, there appears to be some confusion over the date of compliance with those conditions set forth under Site Plan Regulation 904.17.b and Subdivision Regulation 905.6b. My client has been working diligently on satisfying the 33 conditions of approval set forth in your draft, which you forwarded to me on March 25, 2021. However, many of these conditions are dependent upon the decisions of the State of New Hampshire Department of Transportation as to the driveway permit and the State of New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services as to the alteration of terrain permit numbers 2 and 3 of the conditions. We anticipate receiving preliminary decisions from both agencies on both applications within the next 60 days, and those decisions may affect satisfying several of the other conditions of approval. Rather than piecemealing a number of conditions of approval which might be satisfied sooner than the others, and trying to meet deadlines which would require only a temporary resolution, which would need to be revised after information is received from the state, my client respectfully requests that the Planning Board grant a waiver of the time frame set forth under the above cited regulations of an additional 45-day period, and instead request the Planning Board grant an extension for all conditions of approval for both the site plan and the subdivision plan to be satisfied no later than February 16, 2022, being 1 year from the date of the meeting. My client is agreeable as a condition of waiver and extension of time frame to provide both you and the Planning Board written updates on the status of satisfying the conditions of approval on a monthly basis. Please present this letter of request for waiver and request for extension of time for satisfaction of conditions of approval to the Planning Board for its consideration at its next meeting. Please advise me of the date of the next meeting where this matter will be considered. Did we do that? Okay. So that I may attend and answer any questions the board may have. Thank you for your consideration and assistance. Yours truly, Morgan A. Hollis. She's not here. Oh, sorry. He's not here.
Correct.
Did he tell you he wasn't going to be here?
He asked me if I thought that it was going to be a concern, and I said I didn't believe so.
Oh,
So you just want a motion to?
Yeah, we granted for the state permits up to a year. And then we said 90 days for some of the other things.
Now, and again, just to be clear, the board tried to beg them to ask for more than 90
For more
days.
time.
Oh, yeah.
And the attorney kept saying, no, that's all we need. But the board mentioned several times, she should have won 6 months.
yeah, with 33 things.
Yeah. And they said they could be a year.
Now they see the benefit of going to the year.
I make a motion that we grant the waiver and extend the request for extension of time until February 16, 2022.
Second.
Motion by Lynn, second by Richard. So that's your the
And
motion.
they'll do monthly updates, they told us.
Yeah.
Do you want to include that in the motion?
Yeah, I request the time for the satisfaction of the conditions of approval and its consideration. Yeah. With monthly updates. Yeah, that's a good idea. Why not?
Well, they offered it, and I think
Yeah.
that's a good, I think that's a good idea.
It's not necessary, but why not?
Well,
They offered
it's a big project, and I think it's.
Yeah, it's cool. It's nice if they could do that, yeah, let us know how it's going, because I don't know, people ask me all the time, do you know what's going on up there? The answer's no.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? I guess that's unanimous. You vote.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, Okay.
Is that the last letter?
Oh, no.
She's so.
The next one's an easy one. It's just letting you know that the latest Town and City magazine is here. And in case I'm doing a PSA for my own benefit, just in case someone might know. This is the second year I've tried to donate a very large tree that I have.
Oh, that's right.
A Christmas tree. It's a balsam fir that's over 30 feet tall, and it's in here. They agreed to
Yeah,
promote it.
it's early on in that, on the left side.
Has anybody called you about
I've had interest from a few towns, but when they've come and looked at it, they realize how much effort it's going to be to harvest the thing.
Have you talked to, the city of New York?
Well,
How about the White House?
well,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
since the municipal association in New Hampshire agreed to help me with the promotion of it, they would like to see it go to a New Hampshire community. However, we're not, we're getting down to short strokes now, and time's getting short.
Rockefeller Center would be cool.
So I'm gonna talk to them and see if they would be willing to go a little further afield or have
Nobody
the.
wanted my dad's trees. There's other trees out front that had to come
Oh,
down.
that's right.
it? The town of Kingston doesn't want to do some sort of
I tried.
plans?
I tried last year and this year. Nope, they weren't interested.
Can't touch the bands.
Okay,
That would be beautiful on plans.
it would, and I'll tell you, the rec
Do you have
department,
to burn it? Is that?
the rec
is
department was very interested, but I think the logistics were an issue.
Is that the requirement in Kingston that you have to burn it? Like a bonfire?
You're gonna blow up at least one cart in the process.
Okay, let's carry on here. This next letter is from one of our board members. He's not writing as a board member, but it is one of our board members, Chris Bashaw.
Oh.
This is right.
Subject 49 Danville Road correspondence. This is an email from Chris to Ellen asking if this could be read at the next meeting, which is tonight. Kingston Planning Board, please be advised that I am putting in a farm pond for incidental agricultural uses at my property address of 49 Danville Road, Kingston, New Hampshire, also known as Fort Kingston Farm. I have confirmed on 3 separate occasions with DES that no permit is required from them based on the size, scope, and location of my pond. I have also reviewed the town of Kingston excavation permits requirements that refer to the following state RSA, and I am affirming that I am exempt from being required to obtain a permit from the town and that no other permits are required. And the RSA is Chapter 155E, Section 2A1, stating that no permit shall be required for the following types of excavations, and it's number B, which reads, letter B, which reads excavation that is incidental to agricultural and silvicultural activities, normal landscaping, or minor topographical adjustment. This message is to inform the board of what is going on and is not an application or request for permission. If the board would like to, you may place this in my property file to address my concerns, to address any concerns that may arise. Once the pond is complete, I will provide the planning board a sketch of the overall area of the pond to place in the property file. Thank you, Chris Bashaw, 49 Danville Road, Kingston. So presumably there's been activity related to that, which is why we got a letter. Okay. Anything you want to add? Questions from anybody? All right. What's this one?
You told me to print it off me.
Yeah. Just wanted to make sure folks knew that as of July 1 through legislation, the office of, what used to be the Office of State Planning, more recently known as the Office of Strategic Initiatives, has been disbanded. And the planning folks are now part of the Department of Business and Economic Affairs. They are now the Office of Planning and Development, OPD, within the Department of Business and Economic Affairs. And the energy part of that group, because it was planning and energy, so the planning group went to Business and Economic Affairs. Energy became a new entity, a new department of Energy. And so it has its own commissioner, and I believe that the person who was the director of the State Planning Office is now the commissioner for the Department of Energy. And I talked with one of the planners at the State Planning Office, and I mean, it's going to take them months to sort out how it all works, but they intend to continue providing municipal planning services as they have in the past. So, but we'll see what happens.
How many are there of them?
Well, the whole department, I mean, it's got the flood people, it's got planning people, it's got some administrative stuff. I mean, there's probably a dozen of them, maybe, total.
Just to feed off that, now if you call the state for a question, which I do every now and then on septics or wells or something, it takes about a week for them to get back to you because they're so short-staffed.
Yeah. Okay. I have a few things on my list here to tick through. Some of them are not going to be simple. And Glenn, I hate to put you on the spot, but do we have a CIP to review?
No.
I don't know what else to say.
No. And we're getting precarious. I have to send out
Next year.
I have to send out the request for September. I have to do that probably in about a week.
Can you skip a year?
It would be best not.
It would be best not to.
All right. Well, it's in your hands, man. I don't know what else to say. I've tried, but
You have.
So I just put it on August 17th agenda, so that when you know you have to do it?
well, you're going to have to give a
Yes.
deadline prior to that.
Yes.
Because
The
when he
same
looks at the
deadline.
agenda and sees the 17th, he's
No,
going to
the
go,
does he have to have his paperwork
same,
by?
the same deadline. August 17th,
paperwork due by the 5th.
paperwork due by the 5th.
Good one.
It's the same deadline.
You got it. That's it. Okay. We talked at a meeting prior to this about, particularly when we had a couple of very long meetings that went very late, talking about possibly adjusting, setting an end time to our meetings so that a lot of towns do that. And I provided a couple of examples to Ellen. I believe she shared them with you all. Didn't know if you wanted to talk about that and if you had any thoughts about it. I mean, some of them call an end time, saying, you know, it won't go any later than this. And if they're in the middle of a hearing, they continue it to the next meeting. And then there are others that say any meeting not called and in progress by a certain time will be automatically continued, which means that they can go past that, whatever that time is. But 10 o'clock seems to be the time that at least the boards that I'm familiar with tend to call an end to it. So,
And I noticed in that one you separately sent us, it said any meetings, any agenda item not started before 10 o'clock gets postponed. But if you start something at 9:50 and it goes for 2 hours.
Well, yeah, I think what you should say is, like you're saying, nothing new after 10 o'clock, but if something's in the process, I think we should say like an absolute time of 10:30. I mean, because somebody's got 20 minutes left to finish, we shouldn't slam the gavel and take them off for 20 more minutes of time.
Right.
So I think we should say, you know, if you're in process, you know, the absolute meeting will end at 10:30. And if you have to continue, you gotta continue.
Yeah. And if they say we can't present in 30 minutes or 35 minutes,
Correct.
whatever, yeah, just say, okay.
Well, I would think at like 10:15, what you might want to do is just take a vote, if you want to continue the current hearing or not. Or, I mean, if if you wanted to
Cut
continue it
back.
that night or continue it to a different day.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't start anything new after 10.
You should be able to tell how it's gonna be another 20 minutes or another 2 hours at that point in time, quarter of 10.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yep.
Is there any thought to starting meetings earlier?
We're already 6:30 now.
Hmm?
We're already at 6:30.
I don't know what time we're at.
Yeah.
So is there any thought to starting earlier?
Well, that's difficult for some people to make. I think Chris is indicated that
Yeah.
Might be difficult for Robin.
getting here any earlier, and it seems like that's a case for Robin as well.
Yeah, they often
Feeding
come in
kids.
right, even if a few minutes late, because they're trying to get here on time.
There was a webinar that I attended today, and one of the things they talked about, which I have to review some of it with the board, was if you're going to set standards, you should stick with them. Because otherwise, if you waive them for one, then the next person's going to want to know why you didn't waive it for them. They suggested having also in your guidelines, perhaps something that said that public speak, for the public, you have 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Because that helps to make your meetings go a little faster. But if you're gonna have it, it should be like in your bylaws or guidelines or
Rules of
something.
procedure.
And that way, but they also then say the same thing, don't waive them. If someone brings up something that's gonna take more than 3 minutes, that the board thinks might be relative, add them to your next agenda, rather than say, oh, we'll give you more time. Because then you're making an arbitrary decision. It's different for the planning board. There might be something where it's gonna take you 2 more minutes and you say, okay, but they were kind of trying to say that you shouldn't be waiving things a lot, because then you're gonna get into, well, how come they got to speak 5 minutes and I didn't? So these were just suggestions. So I like what Peter was saying, that if you tell people, if you haven't started by 10, but on the other hand, we're ending at 10:30. So, as you said, if at 9:45 you say to someone, we're gonna have to wrap this up, or would you like to continue, or will you be done? But if at 10:30 or 10 o'clock, you waive it for that person, their thing is then saying, well, then the next guy's gonna ask next week to waive it. You're gonna get into a habit of waiving, which means you've now eliminated the point of you doing it in the first place. I just wanted to bring that up because I just heard it today, so.
Well, the problem with that is if we use the theory, if not started by 10, it doesn't start. We have a lot of things that can start at 5 to 10 and go to midnight.
But that's where Peter's safety valve comes in, that if you do start something
It has
just
to be
before
at
10,
10:30.
then you've got until 10:30 to at least,
State your point.
get something
Make a
done,
point
and then continue it and.
But it will be
continue,
continued.
But it's a hard stop at 10:30.
They may choose, they may hear that and choose, okay, thank you very much, we'll see you next month.
Yeah, they might just say, you know what, I'd rather do 7 o'clock at your next
Right,
meeting.
Exactly.
Right.
And at that point, I would think we put them up first on the agenda of the next meeting.
Well, that was the next thing I was
Well,
gonna
yeah,
ask.
then you
If
get
the board's going this way,
someone.
and someone wants to do this paperwork, I'm gonna recommend that the board stop putting hearings on the first Tuesday of the month. Because that's gonna have to be your safety valve meeting. That's when you usually would do board business, but if someone's gonna be cut off in the 3rd meeting of the month, you're either gonna have to start slamming everybody in the same time, or this is gonna be the meeting that this is board business anyway. We're gonna put you on for our board business night, then we'll have board business at the end, but at least you have a date that you can move them to that's not a full month away.
I think also too, I think we're covered a little bit when an applicant says, we'd like to be heard at your next available board meeting. Well, if the next meeting is full, that means the following is our next available board meeting. It doesn't help us to stack all the stuff on one night, no, we're not gonna get it done at 10 o'clock.
Right.
So the next available meeting is this one, because this one's full, so you're over here, that's our next available meeting. The next meeting in line is not necessarily our available meeting because it's full.
Right, because we used to have it, that when they said you want to have your next meeting, it was your next hearing date, not the next time the planning board is going to be. Because if you're gonna do this, you need to have a slot where you can put people. And I think that that's why the first meeting of the month should be left open for this.
Yeah. And with the exception of the warehouse, which was a giant project, most of the continuations have happened because the applicant wasn't
Ready.
done already. So,
So that was my concern about doing this, because I think this is a great idea.
well,
But on the other hand, you need to have a place to put them.
I'll make a motion that we go with what Peter said, that it starts by 10, ends by 10:30, and will be continued.
Could, Ellen, based on this, could you, I could if you wanted me to, craft some wording that we could review at our next meeting? And,
Do that too.
because whatever we do, we should put it into our rules of procedure.
Should reflect on
And
Even the
it should,
applicant.
and it should appear on the top of all of our agendas and all of our legal notices, so.
I like that one.
Could we limit people talking about the same thing over and over and over?
That's,
The noise, the trees, all the things we heard, and if we can say, well, wait a minute, that was already discussed. You know,
that's his job, and most of the time it happens, that he says, if you have any new material, but then they go over the old stuff, and we've gotta start shutting people up.
And if people write numerous letters, and some of the letters have to do the same thing, they can be put into the minutes so the public can read them, but, I mean, you read the same letter over and over and over, and you keep talking about the same thing.
Particularly when they're form letters.
Exactly. I mean, we understand there's an issue with the lights, you don't have to hear about it for 2.5 hours.
And I think people should have a limitation on how long they can speak. And I know it's hard. If they have to speak more than 3 minutes, I mean, 3 minutes is 500 words. So if you can speak, if you can't say it in 500 words, you got a problem. But there are some people that truly may have a number of different points that are valid that they want to go through. If they finish their 3 minutes, they get to the end of the line.
I don't know if that saves any time, though, if you let them keep going back every.
Yeah, it's a good point. I would hope that people would prepare a letter ahead of time, because most people can edit them down, or even if they want to speak in notes.
But people don't see the plans in advance. How can you write a letter when you haven't seen the plans?
Yeah, well, that's true.
I mean, the kids that were sitting here said, our biggest concern was the buffer, and we didn't see the plans until like a couple days ago or yesterday or something, so how, that was our concern, we wouldn't have even come.
That's something else I want to ask the board
Why
about.
don't table this to next meeting, you can come up with some things and.
If we can, if people are interested in the time limitation, we can add
Yes.
that in.
That was just an example, by the way. I mean, that was an
I
example.
kinda liked it.
But, you know,
No, I like the 10 and 10:30 that you come up with.
Yeah, I think
Peter.
that's good.
that's very legitimate.
And just,
And keeping the next Tuesday open, because that allows the board to also set up to do board business it wants to do. But so you can do it later in the meeting, also knowing you're gonna end by 10. So, but that way you have a spot to put anyone with this new procedure.
And we haven't got to any board business this year to speak of. There's a
that's
lot
a point I was gonna bring up, but along the same thing, I made a request to the conservation group to schedule a second meeting a month, which they have done now.
Okay.
So if we have a hearing that we have a plan for, that they can't say we didn't have a meeting, we didn't look at plans. So they're gonna cancel that meeting if they don't need it, if we don't present them with plans, but they're
It'll be
gonna
posted.
cover the plans.
Actually, if we keep the first Tuesday of the month open for continuations, that shouldn't happen anyway.
Might be helpful too, in the conservation committee, talking to them, if we have a big plan to get it down, or something else comes up, and they have, instead of sending us a big page for Glenn to sit and read for them, maybe they can send a representative to one of our meetings and speak in behalf of the plan board. I'm sorry, the conservation committee.
I just want to speak a little bit about what we all just talked about. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to be here any longer than anybody else. And I have to write this stuff down, as people say. But you have to be really cautious about what you start to do for limitations for people being able to speak or read a letter in a public hearing. No one likes to read them. But on the other hand, we invite people in our notice to them to send a letter to the planning board which will then be part of the record. If you don't at least say their name, in the minutes it doesn't say anything, I understand it's long, but if you have to at least say the person's name and address, and that they sent a letter to the board, and capsulize it, if you will, but it is, you have to be really careful. Not that you can't limit how long someone speaks, because you can, and you can say new information, please, that kind of thing, but to start to say that, well, please send us a letter, which we're going to not even address at the meeting, gets
Yeah.
kind of iffy.
Yeah.
And then you get the public
Then they'll
frankly
show up.
annoyed with the board, because why did I write a letter? You told me I could write a letter and you're not even gonna, so there has to be a balance.
Yeah.
I understand not reading 27 letters that all say the same exact thing, but you know who's just, please sign this. And you can say that we have 27 letters that all say this,
Here are the people
here are the people who did it, but you just have to balance, because the public has a right at a public hearing to have their.
And we did that, I mean, as a perfect example, during one of the last Zoom meetings that we did for Satellite.
No,
They presented a number of letters that, you know, in support that they were able to get, and we read one of the letters, and then they were all the same, so then we just then read the names and the addresses of the individuals.
Oh, no, I'm not saying any was coming from to this point, I'm just saying in our discussion,
Well-
since we're trying to, you know,
Yeah,
be more
but I
concise.
mean, we are trying to do that
Yeah,
sort of thing.
exactly. But I just think if we're setting guidelines and policies, we want to be cautious as to what we say we will
Yeah.
or not do in a public hearing, that's all.
Well, the selectmen just went through that process of the public hearing, public comments twice a meeting, and,
But theirs is different, because those are public meetings, where you don't even have to take public comment at a public meeting. We're having public hearings where we specifically send letters to abutters to come in and give their comments. So that's all I'm saying, theirs
The
is kind of
difference
different.
is, somebody comes into us with a problem, we can basically say, okay, we'll consider this and talk about it next meeting. Where you're considering things that are being,
talk about right now, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I was just thinking,
And the
of time
downside.
limitation was, you guys discussed, and I couldn't remember what the discussion was about, but, didn't know if that was applicable to, yeah, we can't just cut people off unless they start repeating themselves, which happens a lot.
So,
Ellen's gonna come up with some.
so with regard to the time limit, we're gonna look at some wording for next meeting?
Yep.
And the downside, just the selectmen and the school board do, is that, you know, we have 3 topics, and then they've made decisions on them, and then somebody can do public comment, and whatever they wanted to talk about, decisions all made.
Right, yeah.
Adam, okay?
Okay, now?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. Another item that I raised the issue to, I don't think I've done it here at the board, but to Glenn and to Ellen one day when we were chatting in the office.
Talk about antiquated.
Most boards, most planning boards will use a standard form when they do a condition of approval. And it's just a way of making sure that we capture all the things and we don't miss things. And when I brought the issue up, Ellen pulled this out. She said, oh, well, we have one of those.
She says, we should have a form at every meeting, and I went, it's at every meeting.
And if I knew about it, I don't remember it. And I did happen to provide a couple of examples from a couple of other towns that do this, and it's just a good thing to do. It's a good practice.
Being more proactive.
Yeah, this has come up in the inspectors meetings. Is that some of the conditions of approval, there are new systems in place to help the inspectors because they're missing some of them when they're issuing permits and things like that. So we worked that out internally, but we're finding out when we're working this out internally that some of the conditions of approval are like a loop. Because in order to get a building permit, you have to have met all the conditions of approval. One of the conditions of approval is the last approval was that you must meet all fire and building code regulations. Well, how do you do that before you get your building permit? So Glenn has talked about the fact that some towns do, what did you say was precedent?
Well, conditions precedent and conditions subsequent.
Which is something the board can think about, but, yes, thank you. And actually, what's his name, Doug McGuire asked that question at the selectmen's meeting when we were talking about. But some of the conditions of approval, actually, I think what you want them to be is actually notes on the plan.
Yeah, that's.
Not a condition,
You are going
that
to
the
do this.
condition of approval is putting the note on the plan, and that these are the notes. So we were talking about that some of the conditions of approval are making it almost impossible for people to meet them prior to getting a building permit. So that maybe if we had a form, which we actually have had for a long time, but we just haven't used, to make sure that our conditions of approval, what we want them to say. Like, for example, we approved the roadway at Granite Fields, or whatever it's called, you know, the new plan. No one ever said they wanted a pre-construction meeting. No one ever said they wanted Dennis to inspect during the process. So that's not happening, because nobody's told anyone to do these things, which we normally would do, but we didn't. And so Dennis on several occasions is like, does anyone want me to go inspect? Because it's easier to fix something while it's happening instead of at the end. But I can't tell them to, because the planning board didn't tell them to do that. Nor was there a pre-construction meeting that would have required a bond to be able to pay Dennis to do those things. So I think by having a checklist, it might make our decisions look like what we want them to. And it will help with all the inspectors and stuff downstairs, because based on what the planning board's going to do, we're then writing up documentation, but they're now going to have a book that anytime someone puts in a building permit, they're going to look up the tax map number, hopefully they've written the right one, and they will then know that there are conditions of approval before anyone issues any sort of permit.
And if we get digitized and have the computers, then that can be on there, so when somebody goes to do something, it flags an issue.
So anyway, that's...
So what we have that I just became aware of is a checklist. What I've given you for examples from two towns, though, is sort of taking that checklist to the next level, and it actually has the motion right at the top that if a board member chose to make a motion, says, I make a motion to approve blah blah blah, and then it just walks through all the stuff, and the administrative staff provides these at the meetings that they anticipate that a vote will probably be taken, and so some of this can get filled in with the proper, map and lot number and so forth and so on. So, anyway.
Yeah, I think these are good, and then you should go through and cross some off and vote others in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you might not need everything on the page, but at least you could be like, oh, we don't need this, but it reminds everybody what you kind of do need.
Right. So, I think that we should probably use something just so that we don't accidentally miss something.
I know when when we were approving the distribution center, that was a huge thing on my mind, because we were gonna miss something. And I was trying to keep notes throughout the whole process, the 6 months that we went through, trying to make sure we didn't miss something.
So anyway, this could even, so if people want these things handed out at meetings, we can start doing that, so people have them.
But if we start doing this is more work for Ellen and Glenn. Because can this be done in the time frame
Well,
that they work?
if all we do is hand the checklist out, then it's not, what we've already got, then that's not extra work.
It's just, I have copies of this, and every time we come to a meeting, I've already made them. I have them all.
So all we need to do is hand it out to the board at a meeting, whenever
I
we
just have
have.
to hand it out at the beginning of the hearing.
Right.
Because the first time someone comes in, I can just hand these out with the property and everything, the information on it, and then if somebody wants to make a motion, whether it's that meeting or 8 meetings later, use the paperwork, you can work it out at home ahead of time if you want to. It's like a little reminder and note checklist. that-
So you're talking about just using a normal checklist versus what, for example, the town of Raymond does?
Well, it just means that, and if people want to combine them, add them, change them, whatever the board wants to make it easier for them to be able to make a conditional approval that everybody's gonna understand and realize that it makes sense.
Yep.
And that, you know, it's not somehow, sometimes the conditions can't possibly be that. So,
Okay, well,
so I
Just
don't know
wanted-
if
just
you
wanted-
wanna,
just
do you
wanted
wanna
to
bring
raise-
this up again for people to say what they like, don't like, wanna change? Do you need to have it on another agenda lens so you can get a better idea of what is, you know, pick the best of all things, or
Why don't we try it?
you know, just start with one and see how it goes? Okay.
we want to talk about 91A.
I did. A couple of things came up at the webinar that I attended for 91A. And what I thought that I really needed to bring to the board, for you guys to decide what you want to do, because there's been a recent court case where there were questions about participation of board members through emails. And there was a board member who was no longer on the boards, left, and the judge said, get his emails, and told the town to get the former board members' emails, which is now on his personal computer. So the NHMA is recommending that all board members, not just boards of selectmen, have their own separate email address that is only used for town business, rather than use it through your personal one. And they said their first choice is that the town provide board members with an email address. But they also recognize in certain towns that may not be economically feasible, whereas board members could also decide to get like a Gmail address that they only use for town business. I'm just telling you, this is their recommendation. I brought it to Susan's attention to bring it to the board of selectmen, because if you have your own Gmail address, and that's always for board business, that's what a judge in the court's gonna wanna see. And they're not gonna see all your personal emails. But if you don't have a place where your business your town mail goes, they can look through every email you have. So they just
As long as they
recommend.
don't look at my pictures, I'm all set.
Can they look at the spam me too?
We're just recommending that this is the wise course of action for board members.
Problem I have with that is that, I mean, I have two phones, I have a town phone and a personal phone, and I get as many calls in my personal phone
Yeah,
with
but they're
town
not your
business.
emails. This is specific to.
But it's
emails.
also phone.
Texting, yeah.
No, that's
Tracing
an
phone
issue you
calls.
have.
Yeah, I mean.
And that's, I'm not telling
But
everybody they
I
have to
was
do
gonna
that.
say, it's the same thing with my emails, people who, I don't wanna give names, but some people have my personal email, so they send it there instead of to the town, because they know it, they don't know my town.
I don't know your town.
Well,
Well, we got
there was a while there you were having issues with the town one, so.
Yeah. And most people now send them to both,
I only send it to your personal.
which is fine for me, because like I say,
I send it to both because I don't know which one.
they decide they want my phone, I'm in trouble
I'm
anyway.
not saying you have to, I'm just saying.
Well,
you
I have
need to
so
make-
much confidential stuff on my email. I mean, I have a ton of confidential stuff on mine.
So anyway, this was NHMA's recommendation, and since it was a board issue, I just wanted to bring it to your attention that this is their recommendation, and whether or not you wanna, whether the board of selectmen will talk about it as a procedural issue for boards or not, I don't know, but it came up today, and I knew if I was a member of the board, I would want to know this information.
You are a member.
Well, I know, but I have a planning board address, and I would not take business at my phone, at my home.
But I don't do anything planning board on my, with planning board, I mean, you send me emails, I send you thanks.
Yep.
You know,
My
I don't.
point is just
Or if,
that-
or if I send you, it's always planning board
It
office.
is, and that's, I had an engineer sent it to my house once, I went off on him like you can't believe, because he found my email at the bottom of something, and then started sending it to my home address, and I'm like, don't do that, just, no. I'm like, how did you even get it? Oh, I found it at the bottom of, I'm like, yeah, no.
But any email that has to do with planning board, you have a copy of, because You've sent it to me and I've responded to you.
I just want to let you know this happened. The judge said to the town, I don't care if he's on the board anymore or not, or get his emails.
We had
So,
a major issue in Rochester a year ago, and now the school board will absolutely not send any messages, text messages or anything.
and they did want to
Does
remind
not have
everybody,
the right to know.
that emails are considered government records. So, that was their suggestion anyway, that don't use your personal email for town business, or you could get bagged at some point, and they'll read through all your emails. So, I just want to tell you, there are all types of other issues about, there is a new law that's gonna be in effect January 1st. The governor hasn't signed it yet, but it's anticipated that he will. I went over this with Susan today, so she's gonna talk to you about this at your next meeting. As of January 1st, the town has to maintain a master list, there's just one for every board, of every non-public meeting. Every time a board goes into non-public, she has to keep a record of the public body, the date and time of the non-public session, the exemption for going into the non-public session, the date of the decision to seal the minutes, and the date of any subsequent decision to unseal the minutes. And any minutes sealed through the sale or acquisition of real or personal property has to be made available to the public as soon as practicable after the transaction has closed or the public body has decided not to proceed with the transaction. So anything to do with that is no longer going to be considered permanent non-public. So that happens as of January 1st. And it's not that I keep one and Susan keeps one, Susan's gonna have to keep it for the whole time.
She does.
And, so each board should be the ones who send the information to Susan. But they have not set up any time limit. This could go on for, from day one and 30 years later has a list really, really long. So that's January 1st.
Is the town gonna update their computers?
There's a lot of things, I mean, if this immunity thing passes that you're talking about, there won't be any boards anyway.
And they also wanted me, another reminder was that any subcommittee created by the planning board, such as want to review master plan, want to review ordinances, is a public body that requires public notice and minutes. Just want to remind, and that they have, Martin versus Rochester confirmed that a committee of employees such as the technical review committee, providing advice to planning board applicants is not considered a public body, because I guess that was challenged, and the court affirmed that it wasn't a public body. There's a lot about emails and things we've already talked about. There's no such thing as a secret ballot, so if you want to vote on chairman or vice chair, there's no such thing as a secret ballot. You can't do it. So we may have to look at our bylaws, because I'm not sure. We talked about putting that in our bylaws, and I don't know if we did. I have to just check it.
What do you want, a secret ballot?
For voting, there was, I know at one point, we did it at one point.
We have
and then
done it in the past, but we
yes.
haven't done it recently.
We haven't, and I don't remember if there was something in the bylaws that said we could do it by, secret ballot. I know there was a discussion, and I couldn't remember if the board decided to put it in or not.
I thought we rewrote that section anyways, with the procedures after Rich brought it up.
Those were the big things.
We've made it much more open.
The rest of it we talked about already.
Okay.
Anyway, I did want to just tell you about that email thing.
Thank you. I don't have anything else on my list. Ellen, do you?
We handed out these new pages for your book. That was just a sentence that that had been left out that was confusing, so it was just editorial, that said it didn't need anything. It was done in the, above, we say what the ADU requirements are for, and notice what they are for CUP, but then we left out one of the things of the conditional use permit.
Oh, that's
It's been that confusing, so the part where it says, will alter the exterior of any building was added because that's a requirement of us. So it doesn't change what anyone voted, it just clarifies what we said in the paragraph above. So, Glenn had a question about why Robert was asking for something, I said it was required. He says this, where, and then we noticed that it was required in one section and left out in the next one, so.
Glenn, anything else for you?
No,
Richard?
I have a question. I had a tenant in an apartment complex in town. I use the word complex lightly, there's 4 apartments in it. Complaining about the supply of water that he has. It's filthy, that if they wash clothes in the washing machine, clothes come out browner than when they went in. Our ordinance just says, as far as I know, adequate hot water has to be supplied. So I called the state and I said, what does this mean and what can we do, or do you have any guidelines? And they said, no. I said, there's nothing in the state rules that say a landlord has to supply clean water. It says adequate hot water. Said they've tried to get it passed for years, and it never passes, because the definition of clean water is so widespread. And I did say today that there might be something in the plumbing code that says something of this, and I'm going to go to the state plumbing inspector for that. Does anybody know anywhere in the ordinances or anything that I'm missing? And they said that it should be in our ordinances, and it isn't.
Who said it should be in our ordinance?
The health department.
The state health department?
so the state health department who says
We
they
can't do it.
are unable to pass the state
Exactly, want us to do
law,
it.
says that we should do it.
They said it hadn't passed by Senate and all that stuff, so we should pass it.
And I'd recommend I'd recommend personally that tenant either pay or have somebody pay and have a water sample of that building.
Well,
If they can open up a bad can of worms for that.
He has tried.
Whoever owns that building.
he's tried, but the testing places say that only the owner of the property can request it. And I said, I don't know if that's true.
That's not true.
I don't believe that's true.
Anybody can test it.
And don't go to the state testing lab, go to the private testing lab.
Right up there on
They're gonna
125
prove it.
in Lee.
The state, then basically the guy said it's a civil issue.
It is.
It most certainly is, but that,
My question is, does anybody know anything anywhere in here?
Seacoast Analytical.
Seacoast or Nelson Analytical, the two are
Yes.
great. But the,
I used the place in, Darien.
yeah, that's Nelson. Every buyer gets their water tested, and they're not the owner of the property.
Right.
So, I mean, so that I don't think is at all
No,
true.
that's completely not true.
Yeah.
And the
If
second
you were
thing,
to try to use the sample to go to take the property owner to court, you'd have to have some neutral
He
witness.
brought in
See you
a test
sample.
that he said he ran. And I said, no, I need a copy of an official test to be able to argue this. But then the state told me, no, you can't argue it, it's not an issue.
I do know that FHA requires that you can't have coliform
But that's
and,
fine,
and that sort of thing, but that's,
this is a renter.
well, no, I'm just saying that, so there are
Yeah.
rules out there that require, potable water. In
Right.
fact, we're told as realtors that sellers have to provide potable water.
And this guy thinks if he brings it up, the landlord
You
just
can have
says
other
to get
water
out.
that's potable.
Right. Right.
And it can be safe to drink, but it might be, maybe
Full
not.
of iron so that your clothes turn orange.
Right, I mean, a lot of water in Kingston
It's
is
full of iron.
higher than
Oh,
ours.
it is.
I have to have a thing on my water, because otherwise I'm gonna be orange all the time.
Now, they said if it serves more than 20
Mhm.
people, it's
It's a public
considered,
place.
it's considered public and it can be tested. But where it's 4 people,
But the state does have rules on arsenic and, But, that's.
Well, they have limits,
Yeah, they have
acceptable
limits.
limits on all these
Yeah.
tenants.
Yeah, it was.
But most of it is, according to this guy today, is for a buyer, not for a renter.
Yeah, and
Oh, right.
it is voluntary.
They should
Even the
contact
state
the
limits.
housing
It is
authority
voluntary.
and see if they have any, because housing authorities are going to give you information on
Okay, I'll try
rentals.
that.
Unless they find something in that water that's that bad, that guy's not gonna want to find out. I don't know what's in there.
This
Yeah.
guy's just scared if he brings it up, he's gonna get thrown out of the place.
Does he have a lease?
I don't know.
But and the
I'm
problem
trying to
is,
stay
he
as
could be,
Far
because,
away from it as
and
possible.
there's no place to go.
Oh, yeah. I
There is
know.
absolutely no place to rent, period. I mean, in all of Rockingham County, you're lucky if there's 6 rentals available in the course of any given day. And tons of people looking.
Do you see where the level of housing just went up in Rockingham County? It's the highest in the state.
And that's, yes, but that's, what you have to think about is those are the closings that happened in June. And those were the things that went under contract during the frenzy in March, April, and May. And the frenzy has stopped. The frenzy has totally and completely stopped.
Is it
It
really?
started declining around the 20th of May, and it has been going, the frenzy has stopped.
Bidding wars?
We don't need this on the record.
Okay.
It's not.
Oh, okay, because the cash buyers,
Yep.
the cash buyers have bought, they outbid everybody, they bought, they're gone. So the cash buyers are gone, so the normal people are back. Then we have a whole group of people that just got buyer fatigue,
Right.
and they're taking the summer off.
Yep.
They just, they put in 8, 10, 12 offers, and they all got turned down, and they're just tired. And then there's another group of people where the prices have outpaced their ability to pay. So what's happened is there's still people out there, but instead of having an open house and having 60 people like we had a year ago, or 30 people like we had earlier this spring, maybe you get 8 to 12. And you still get 1 or 2 really good offers. The offers that come in are still really good and strong. But the frenzy is totally over at this point, whether it's going to come back, because we also have that traditional lull that happens this time of year. And by the middle of August, it starts to come back. But, I mean, that's just my opinion and what I've been seeing from the stats. And I've been looking at people viewing our properties, but we have databases that we can go into and see how many people are looking at other properties. So I'm looking to see, is it something our company's doing, is it something this company's doing? But it's right across the board, and it's right across the board in every price range. So, and there's still not enough houses. And we still have a 20,000 unit housing shortage in New Hampshire. And building, 5 or 6 or 1,000 houses in Rockingham County in the course of a year isn't enough. I mean, it's just getting worse and worse. So people just don't have a place to live.
I know places are hiring people and people are ending up turning jobs down because they can't find a house to rent.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. I've had a number of people that have contacted me in the last 3 or 4 months that have been transferred here and now have left. They've turned down the transfer and they're staying where they are because they just can't afford to be here.
Rebecca, at the library director, mentioned that to the Board of Selectmen that was one of the problems she was having, getting people to take jobs.
Yeah, it's a big problem.
It's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Before we adjourn, I remember one thing I wanted to ask the board about procedure-wise, since we're talking about things. During the whole Zoom thing, we required that we get electronic copies of the plans, so we can put them on the website for people to look at. I think that was a good idea, and I think people liked it. It's not part of our requirements. So I'd like to ask the board if you'd like me to add that
Yeah.
as part of the submittal requirements.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, because we talked at the last selectmen's meeting about equipping this room with 3 TVs with the plans on.
Yeah, and
Are we gonna have?
But also to be able to have board members have access to the electronic stuff. ahead of
before we
time.
come here,
and
First time
and
we see it.
for it to go on the website so that, you know, the public can go on.
We're talking about TV there, and a big one up here.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
That's what
In lieu of
Epping's been
projector, yeah.
doing for 12 years.
And then that can be direct feed into the,
I just want to say that we put that forward to the Board of Selectmen at the department head meeting, and just to give credit where credit was due, it was Adam who suggested that instead of a screen that we talked about.
Great idea, we just,
It was actually
HDMI
suggested by
cord.
several people.
I'm not writing.
Okay. Anything else?
we did have a food truck ordinance discussion, and that kind of came and went, and I'm hoping that we can come up with something in time this year so that we can go next March. I know it won't affect the last applicant, but, you know, we looked at the stuff that Alan sent out and figure out what we want to accomplish with this, other to enable it, but, you know, there was some discussion about some towns trying to be protective of their existing restaurants and trying to ban food trucks, and others, you know, encouraging them and setting up certain areas. So, well, I think we probably ought to be thinking about what we want to accomplish with the food truck ordinance, and then getting one written so that we have something, we don't have to deny somebody, based on the fact that we don't have, anything in the ordinances that allows it. So, I don't want to see that just die and then all of a sudden next, February, when it's too late, we say, oh yeah, we should have had a food truck ordinance.
If someone feels inclined to want to draft something for the board to consider, that's usually the best way to get it done. So, you know, if a board member has a particular passion about this, then maybe they ought to take the initiative and get a draft done.
I think there's some other things.
I know Robin had been looking into it.
Right.
I don't know, you know, where she might be on that.
Robin said she would compile stuff, but then she didn't get any information to do it from.
Also, don't forget, we had talked about revising our wetlands ordinance to reflect that we could replace the wetlands with wetlands somewhere else. Impervious surfaces for site plans, allowing impervious pavement, 200-foot setback from existing road for innovative, what to allow in that setback after the thing on Marshall Road. Kind of floor plans, I don't think we have that anymore. Definitions of a structure, they're not all the same. And the word enhance in the aquifer protection zone, the other things that we picked up at previous hearings.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last thing you said. I got to definition of structure.
Definition of the word enhance in the aquifer protection zone, because that was one of the criteria, and that was something that we found difficult to necessarily define when we were dealing with the distribution center. So those are all things that we should be talking about, because those are things that have come up in the last year.
Right. Because, you know, one of the, when you do the CUPs, one of the criteria is that it doesn't degrade something, and other ones say that it must enhance.
Yes.
And yeah.
We need to talk about that.
Well, we could talk about it as a whole board, or interested individuals could do it as a subcommittee and bring it to the board. Which is how a lot of planning boards work, that have an ordinance and the regulations committee. And, they go through the list, come up with recommendations, bring it to the board. So I don't know how this board would like to deal with that.
We may actually, Lynn and I said we would work on a few things.
Well, I know that Ellen said that you guys have already gone through that, the ordinances for definitions and, you know, where they appear.
I sent that out though.
What?
To Lynn and Glenn.
Yeah, that's right. You said you sent it out to them and.
Once have you done it? It was months ago that I sent it out, maybe March or something when we first talked about it. I can see it.
We should get together and go over that, because there's a number of things that really we shouldn't let slide, because they've been issues, and a previous issue could become a future issue.
Yep.
Still have, keep my list here.
I see you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we used to go have one meeting every year where we go fairly shortly after March, we go through.
Well, this past year has been
Exactly, that's what happened, is
a
that
bit screwed up, so.
on other boards that have, or other committees or whatever that have that same problem, that we just let everything slide for a year, and now we gotta actively pick it up again. So,
Motion to adjourn?
Second? Favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned at,